2023. Appearing here in person with me are board members Tom Kempner, Luke Ferrin. Attending via Zoom is board member Joyce Giffra. We have legal counsel John Borquin in person, and also legal counsel Jeffrey Blinkoff via Zoom, and Alex Wallach, our village planner, is here in person. We'll go through some housekeeping items. We have closed for decision and awaiting written decision, case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane. We are not yet ready for that written decision. We have case number 3164, Robert Kornstein and Shari Gottesman, but we need a quorum for that, which we do not have, but expect to have at the next meeting in December. We also have case number 3144, Stephen Hickey, 1377 Meadow Lane, which will await the return of our environmental consultant, Chick Voorhees, at our next meeting in December. And we also have closed for decision, but not yet ready with the decision, case number 3165, Victoria Khan, 107 Woolley Street. So those are our housekeeping items, and then we are ready to proceed with the first pending case, which is case number 3156, Eiffel Residence, 2020 Meadow Lane. The applicant here, do you want to continue?
Anthony Pasca, attorney for the applicant, 108 East Main Street, Riverhead. When we left off last time, we had just learned that there was a memo from your environmental consultant, Chick Voorhees, and so Mike Shano's here to address how we've addressed those comments. And the only other item that you guys had raised the last time was some discrepancy about the plans having a couple of different sets of numbers, so the architect's also here to just point out how the plans have been, or the survey's been corrected to reflect the correct numbers. Okay? So Mike?
Michael Shiano from InterScience Research Associates on behalf of the applicant. Sabrina Kelly is here with me too from InterScience. She's just going to log into Zoom so that we have all the plans up in front of us.
Should I join as a panelist?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just zoom in on the proposal stuff? Yeah. Cool. So at the last meeting, as Tony indicated, we had learned that there was a memo from Southampton Voorhees with some additional comments about the proposal. So I'll just go through each of those items here. One item was regarding that there's an existing deer fence on the property, and he specifically, the memo specifically asked us to that we label it as deer fence to be removed. So we wanted to make sure that that was clarified specifically what we wanted to. How we wanted it to be labeled. So CMAC went and met with TN and had a conversation about where the fence can go and how we may want to label it, because we're going to have to show a fence later on in order to comply with pool code requirements and such. So CMAC worked out a specific label Instead of just saying deer fence to be removed, we have labeled it as deer fence, relocate fence inside property line and replace all fences with conforming Southampton Village Code fence. So any fence that is shown on the plan right now, we've made sure that that is what we're going to do based on previous conversations with this board, and information that Alex Wallach had provided at the last meeting. Fences are not generally specifically referenced to this board, so we just want to make sure that the important part is that it will be removed off of the neighboring properties, the neighbor's property, and outside of the wetlands jurisdiction. But we're going to make sure to work with Tian on that later. But it's on this, so it would be part of the approval as part of that. The second question, kind of broadly speaking, was about site drainage. Nelson Pope and Voorhees had asked us to evaluate whether site drainage would be adequately addressed with the proposed site plan. So first to start, just note that there is no existing drainage at all. The house doesn't have anything. The tennis court doesn't have anything. There's no pool, dry well. There's nothing, and the existing driveway, which we have previously indicated and confirmed, the existing driveway is impervious. It's oil and stone with gravel on top of it. So we're changing the driveway out to be a pervious gravel driveway. It's going to have a 40% open void, so it will be able to contain its own runoff. In the event of some type of freezing or soil compaction, we are also going to be adding a trench drain at the entrance of the property to capture anything else, to make sure that anything from that area wouldn't get into the village's right-of-way. As previously asked by this board, we had also added a Coltech drainage system for the tennis court, which is going to capture slightly more than what we have to. It's like 50 cubic feet over, but we are making sure to capture any drainage from the existing tennis court. And we're also proposing drainage for the house where there currently is none. In addition to I believe we also have a pool drywall as well. And in addition to drainage after development, we have also indicated where a proposed project limiting fence is going to go during construction, to ensure that during construction that we don't have movement of soil and stormwater off the property, either to neighbors or onto the village right-of-way during construction. I also would just like to note that we are proposing to disturb less than 1 acre, so we won't need a stormwater prevention plan. It's about 38,000 square feet or so. If we were to get closer to that, I would say that, that we were at 42 instead of 43,560. If we were at 42, I would probably recommend myself that we would go to and do a SWIP anyway. But at 38,000, it's not like we're going to accidentally go over during construction. So that part has been addressed. So with the addition of drainage where there currently is none, we are improving the conditions of the property as a result of that. One of the other things that Chick had asked us about, both in the meeting and in his memo, was whether we could expand the buffer to a setback of 125 feet. Just stop on the existing conditions first, please. Oh, no, the existing planting. Yeah. This was previously submitted, but it's just important to see where existing lawn areas are. Existing lawn in those areas. There is ornamental vegetation that isn't lawn. Per previous discussions with Chick, he had said that we could keep that, though, any ornamental or any landscape vegetation that wasn't considered to be invasive, that wouldn't, after disturbing, after taking out the lawn, wouldn't spread into the areas of the buffer. So we identified a number of plants that you can see those areas in red at the north side, that would include some honeysuckles, some I think black pines, autumn olive. So all of the invasive species are going to be removed and replaced with either trees or shrubs, depending on what is being taken out. But existing landscape vegetation will remain. Can you go to the next screen there? So, previously we had proposed a 50-foot wide buffer, and so we have increased the size of that to 125 foot, which you can see here. The areas of lawn are going to be planted with a mix of little blue stem and switchgrass with some additional shrubs and trees kind of spread out throughout that area. There are some existing, just to the northeast, Sabrina, of the tennis court. I just want to confirm. Those are, yeah, so there are some existing cherry blossom trees that are going to remain, and we're planting around the base of them so, to make sure that it's still a thoroughly contiguous buffer. And then for the point of maintenance and also for access around the property and the tennis court, we're also proposing a 4-foot wide mulch path that goes around it, which is something that is typical for wetland buffer drawings, especially like this, where we're significantly increasing the amount of native vegetation that's going to be on site. To that end, we have increased the size of the buffer that was previously proposed. The previous one was 6,595 square feet. We've increased it to 20,408 square feet, so that's about 13,800 square feet. And we're also proposing to convert, I believe that Sabrina's working on getting the previous plan side by side. There you go. The amount of lawn that we're converting to buffer area is 5,326 square feet. So we've really tried to, based on the village's consultants' comments, improve the environmental quality of the property, as well as kind of the project itself. In addition to the drainage that we're proposing and the buffer, just remind the board, we're also upgrading the septic system to an IA OWTS. So as a result of all of this work that we have been doing with the zoning board and the changes that we've made, we think that this project will wind up having an environmental benefit to the property if a wetlands permit is issued. So, and that's the end of my stuff. CMAC, do you have anything to?
Basically updated numbers, making sure that CMAC Sami architect, we basically made sure that the numbers are in accordance. And basically numbers that I quoted you last time are correct, but now the survey has been updated to reflect that.
That's it. That's what we got. So we're here to answer questions. We've been at this for like 6 months or so, I think, so we'd love to wrap this process up.
Do you have questions?
I do not.
No, you're right.
Can we find out if Joyce Gifford has questions?
No, I don't. I mean, we definitely appreciate all the thoughtful work that you put in to bring this case to this point.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Alex, did you want to say anything?
No.
Okay, so where do you want to leave it? Do you want to adjourn for all purposes?
Love to close.
Okay, I'll motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't know
Oh,
if there's anybody
from
in
the public. Yeah, is anybody
Oh.
from the public, or is anybody on Zoom stage who wants to be heard? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to be heard in case number 3156, 2020 Meadow Lane? Okay, so I'll motion to close for all purposes, case number 3156, Eiffel Residence LLC, 2020 Meadow Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next case we have is case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane. Is the applicant here? Okay, I'll motion to adjourn case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
Which date are we adjourning to?
We're going to go to our next meeting in December, which is, Alex, can you help me out with that?
I believe it's December 12th.
So we'll adjourn case number I'll motion to adjourn case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane, to our next public hearing, December 12th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so moving on to case number 3155, 1750, Waterview LLC, 1750 Meadow Lane.
Good evening, board members. For the applicant, John Bennett, Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York. With me this evening also is Richard Warren from InterScience Research Associates, also Shannon Cochran from InterScience, Michael Lamont and Frank Guittard from Stell, Lamont, Ronnie Architects, Ian Hanback from LaGuardia Landscape Design, and Lee Wisher from the Woods Hole Group is with us on Zoom, hopefully. Lee, are you in? Let's see. We'll see. Oh, he's coming in. Great.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Nice to see you. We were last here on September 12, 2023, and at that time we initially presented the application and also responded to a memorandum prepared by Nelson Pope and Voorhees dated September 7, 2023. Just want to give you a very broad overview of the project because it's been a while, very, very broad. And then I'll ask Rich Warren to come up as well as Ian Hanback. The property, the applicant seeks both dimensional relief and a wetlands permit to develop the subject property, redevelop it. In addition, the applicant is requesting an amendment and an increase to a previously imposed scenic easement. There are village but not state wetlands in the northwest portion of the property. Unlike the north side of Meadow Lane, these wetlands are regulated only by the village, not by the state DEC. That you will not find these wetlands on a New York State tidal wetland map, or for that matter, a freshwater wetland map. In addition, given its location on Meadow Lane, the Dolliver Line dune crest setback requirements are applicable. But we've demonstrated in the past where the board has viewed this with quite a bit of doubt, given the fact that the existing dune crest setback is maybe as much as 300 feet seaward of the Dolliver Line. The property is currently improved by a substantial existing residence in the neighborhood of about 6,000 square feet, a tennis court and a swimming pool. The pool is actually located on the north side of the existing home, approximately 30 feet from the wetlands. That's the existing pool. The applicant seeks to shift all proposed improvements away from the wetlands. The proposed wastewater system will be shifted from approximately 96 feet to 193 feet from the wetlands. Now, it's important that the board recall that the wetlands setback for a wastewater system, as far as I know, the village has the most stringent requirement, which is 200 feet. Current system is 96 feet, less than half that requirement. We're shifting to 193 feet from the wetlands, almost meeting the setback. The proposed pool will be moved from a mere 35 feet to approximately 160 feet, a conforming setback. As demonstrated in our prior submissions, pools have been permitted as close as 50 feet from Shinnecock Bay, a much more significant wetland system, connected wetland system on the north side of Meadow Lane. We demonstrated this through quite a bit of submissions. So we're going to comply with the 150-foot setback. In addition, significant revegetation of the property is proposed, not only to expand the scenic easement area by 3,482 square feet, but also to replace invasives and non-native plantings within the property with superior native habitat. By correspondence dated November 9, 2023, we'd submitted some additional information in response to comments raised by the board. These filings included 1, a site plan overlay comparison, existing conditions, and a site plan overlay comparison with the 2006 approval, which I believe was a request made by Mr. Ferran at the last public hearing. We also have a Dolliver Line aerial analysis, and Rich and Shannon are going to go through these in detail. We have a Dolliver Line aerial analysis prepared by InterScience Research Associates dated October 10, 2023. We have a Dolliver Line shoreline analysis prepared by InterScience Research Associates dated October 10, 2023. We have a Dolliver Line analysis including LiDAR topography and determination as to the location of the actual crest of dune provided by Robert Smith from Squires and Holden. We have correspondence of Robert Smith regarding the history of the Dollar Line. We have a comparison of neighboring parcels, including gross floor area and lot coverage calculations. We have a proposed amendment to the scenic easement for discussion purposes. Those are all submitted under cover of our letter dated November 9. That said, I would like to ask Richard Warren to walk you through the additional maps and provide some additional information that were filed with the board, and then I would like to have Ian Hanback review the proposed revegetation plan. I have probably 45 seconds to a minute after the end of their presentation just to note something about the pace of the submissions. Thank you. Rich, you wanna come up?
Good evening, Richard Warren from InterScience Research Associates. At the September meeting, on behalf of the applicant, you received information regarding the site conditions from two specialists that we brought in on the project. You heard testimony and received a detailed report from Dr. Lee Wisher, who's here on Zoom. He's from the Woods Hole Group, and based upon his inspections of the site and review of surveys, aerials, and historic information, he provided you information regarding the healthy condition of this stretch of beach and the dunes. Dr. Wisher provided an analysis from historical aerial photography of the accretion of sand and growth of the beach and the dunes in this area, and he provided his expert opinion to you that the project will not have a negative impact on the dunes. You also received a report from James Walker, who's a biologist and planner with InterScience Research Associates, regarding the wetlands. So we've got really the two issues on the site. We've got the Dollar Line and the dunes, and also wetlands. His review found the quality of the wetlands was actually marginal, that there was no standing water, and through all the times that I've inspected the property, I've never seen any standing water in this area. It's essentially a monoculture of Phragmites, which is a New York State invasive plant, and within that you'll find groundsel-bush and some Myelominate, which is also a New York State invasive plant. He provided his opinion in the report that the implementation of the proposed restoration plan that we have proposed for this site is going to improve the wetlands quality on the property, as well as provide a better adjacent area for it. At the September meeting, the Zoning Board of Appeals requested some additional information to be submitted. The board requested information about the comparative gross floor area of the neighborhood. So we had put together this table that you've all received hard copies of. To prepare this, we foiled the village files. We reviewed properties between 1660 and 1990 Meadow Lane. We're about in the middle of that area. And we prepared this table showing comparative gross floor area and lot coverage with lot areas and with the addresses of each. So for this exercise, we examined surveys as well as the building permit applications, because some of the information was not on surveys based upon the date of them. 4 of the 15 properties that we looked at did not have any information available. We found that the range in the gross floor area, from the largest being 17,394 square feet to the smallest home being 5,215 square feet. If you looked at the median value, which is the center point of where those are, the median value was 9,870 square feet for gross floor area. The proposed house that we have at this site is 9,746 square feet, so we are smaller than the median value of what currently exists in that area. We also provided you lot coverage data found shown on the surveys or from building permit records. We're not quite sure how accurate that is, but over the range of time, you don't really know whether or not the information is comparable to what is being requested today. But I would note that section 116.11.2 of the Village Code states the maximum allowable lot coverage is 14% of lot area plus 1,500 square feet. For 1750 Meadow Lane, this totals 28,000 square feet, 28,334 for allowable lot coverage. The proposed coverage is 16,824 square feet, or 8.7% of lot area, or 60% of the allowable coverage by the code. The Zoning Board of Appeals asked for a simplified overlay, so we prepared 2 of them for you, of the existing conditions versus the proposed conditions. We provided 2 separate drawings. One is an overlay of the existing versus proposed. So this, you have these in your records as well. Shannon, if you can just zoom in on the upland buildable part. So what we've shown here is the existing in the blue and the proposed in the green. And you'll see in this area, you see the retreat of the swimming pool back in this area. This is the coastal erosion hazard line. Here's the proposed swimming pool moving from here to here. This is covered decking on the upper part and lower decking down through here. This is the proposed home. The next overlay that we provided you is an overlay of what had been approved in 2006 versus what was currently proposed. And in this diagram, you'll see that, again, what had been approved is the blue. And you'll see that the swimming pool is no longer there. They approved the swimming pool going from there to this location in blue. And they approved the garage with a roof deck in this area. Our proposal retreats from this setback from here down to this line, this green line here, which is decking in the house back through here. The house is this bolder green line, and our swimming pool is here. So generally, the improvements that you see that we have proposed are relatively consistent with the footprint of the existing and the proposed improvements, with the exception of we are showing retreat from the wetlands. As you're aware, this application requests relief from the 100-foot setback from the 1982 dune crest established that's called the Dolliver Line. At the last hearing, Dr. Wisher discussed the history of the significant dune building and the seaward expansion of the dune feature in the property line. It's our opinion that because there's been such a gradual but dramatic change in the widening of the beach in this area and the dune conditions, that the Dolliver Line is really a relic. It really is not something that's really should be made applicable to construction today. The coastal erosion hazard line that was established by coastal specialists by the New York State DEC really becomes an appropriate restrictive barrier for limiting seaward edge of development. This project's entirely landward of that boundary. Section 116.8D1 of the Village Code requires that on all ocean beach water frontage, all buildings and structures shall be set back 100 feet shoreward from the crest of the first rank of ocean beach dunes. The village has 6.7 miles of shoreline, about 35,260 linear feet. This provision of the 100-foot setback from the first rank of ocean beach dunes affects 5.5 miles of the village, about 80% of the shoreline. The 1982 Dolliver Line restriction affects 1.1 miles of the shoreline, which is the western part. And when this line was established, it was mostly an undeveloped area. It was the area just to the west of, I think it's the third or fourth house west of Road D. And that whole section, at the time, there was a dirt road, and homes are really just being considered in that area. The property owners that you see today in this area are being subject to using a dune crest line that's 41 years old. It's not representative of the conditions that are here. If you can put up the aerial. So this is a comparison of an aerial photograph on the top, which is 1983, which is the closest we could get to 1982. And it shows, and what we've done is we marked here the shoreline in this blue line, just so we can see, and we transpose that over to what it looks like in 2023. You can see a dramatic growth. I mean, look at where the property boundary lines are. You look at where the beaches are. You can see this is just further evidence of what Lee Wisher had produced in the document, that this area is growing and it's also stable. We also provided the next slide. So this is an aerial that we put from this section, which shows the Dolliver Line versus dune crest lines. So this red line is the Dolliver Line over here. These are village-owned properties, so we don't have the Dolliver Line for that. But the Dolliver Line is in red, and these green lines you see through there are all from different surveys. Those, you'll see some that we don't have because that information was not available. But you can see the disparity between the Dolliver Line and the dune crest line on these properties. The Dolliver Line does not make sense in 2023. So the next drawing that we also provided to you is one where we overlaid on top of the same aerial that I just showed you, topography from LiDAR. So this is topographic information, 2-foot contours produced by U.S. Geologic Survey. Smith, Squires and Holden, who's our surveyor, and he's well respected and known. You know, their firm has 120 years of experience of surveying in the village of Southampton.
He's probably one of the most knowledgeable surveyors that we've worked with. We asked him to identify the first rank of ocean beach dunes, which is what your section of the code speaks to if you weren't in this area. That's the blue line. Dolliver line is the red line. The blue line is where he says is the first rank of ocean beach dunes based upon topography. He saw that there was a secondary dune system forming in this area, with the first rank of ocean beach dunes being out here in this area that is west of us. And that's probably because with the groin, the jetties from Shinnecock Inlet, which is further west, this is just continuing to build out further and further, the more west you go. What's also interesting is we had him place on this drawing the location of the surveyed line of the dune crest that we have on our property from a site-specific survey on our property, which is the green line shown there. And you can see that the green line and the blue line, which is taken from the LiDAR maps, are coterminous. They're on top of each other. So it gives you some sense of assurance that the lines that he's drawn are accurate. So the drawing actually shows the drawings that we're required to use are showing 41-year-old dune crest lines. Bob Smith also provided us a letter that you have in your file that he stamped and signed, saying that it's his opinion the Dolliver line is no longer relevant as the dunes have replenished themselves naturally. However, the Dolliver line still remains part of the code. The improvement on this site are proposed 330 feet from the first rank of ocean beach dunes, where your village, for 80% of the village, requires a 100-foot setback. We're not asking to go to that 100-foot setback. We're asking to be able to go to the coastal erosion hazard line, which is a more appropriate seaward boundary. We also provided you, back in the September meeting, an aerial photograph, and this is that aerial photograph that shows the location of our improvements as they relate to the houses to the east and west of our home. This is an overlay of the proposal on top of an aerial photograph that shows existing. And what we did, and this was actually part of the design strategy with the client, is to make sure that they weren't going to interfere with the neighbors, because I think that that's important. So we had two lines drawn. A line drawn that shows the seaward edge of the homes. The seaward edge of the homes, front home. Our house is behind that. Front of the pool, our pool's behind that. We wanted to be sure that we're sensitive to the neighbors. So with this project, and frankly, you have letters submitted in the file from these two neighbors that are supportive of this project. We worked hard on this plan to try to come up with something that would be appropriate. This home will be FEMA compliant, where the current home is not. The overall improvements will increase the setbacks of the wetlands on site and allow for an increase in the buffers. The existing pool deck that's 30.8 feet, we're going to be moving the structure back to 64.4 feet as currently designed. The swimming pool is going from 35 feet to 160 feet. The sanitary system is going from 96 feet to 193 feet. The plan incorporates a native wetlands restoration and the removal of the common reed on the property and restoring native wetland and coastal habitat throughout the entire site. There will be no lawn on this property. There will be no non-native landscape on this property. The owners have committed to that because that is actually the aesthetic that they want with the property. Ian Hansback of LaGuardia Landscape Design is going to speak about that plan in a moment. The plan provides for a substantial improvement in the setbacks, still meeting the coastal erosion hazard requirement. We're going to have an IA low nitrogen treatment system for the property, and we're providing runoff control where at present there's limited drainage on the site. There's a detailed stormwater runoff control plan that's designed by LaGuardia Design. The driveway entrance has been shifted over slightly. This drawing shows it move, but the driveway right now is up here. We're moving it further away from this small little wetland pocket that exists here, this kind of a remnant of wetlands. So in summary, we believe this is a good project and provides substantial and beneficial improvements to the wetlands found on site and will not impact the dunes. We received the Nelson Pope and Voorhees memo last Thursday at 10 o'clock. Your filing deadline for additional information was 12 o'clock Thursday, so we couldn't actually respond. But I actually just want to go through a couple of the things with you just to let you know that we are going to respond back and hopefully in a helpful way. They identified a number of things in their memo that they asked us to respond to. They asked us to modify the plant inventory to include additional diversity of native plants. LaGuardia Design is working on that now. So we'll be back to you at the next meeting with some additional details on the landscape plan. Even though the plan includes considerable retreat from the overall structures from wetlands, item 22 and 27 discusses the position of the improvements in the northwest corner. That's this right here, and its relationship to wetlands, and speak about its degree of nonconformity to the wetland setback. Stella Rawani, the architects for the project, are examining that right now to see if we can address that issue to ease up some of that setback in that corner for you. Although, again, we'd ask you to recognize that the wetlands in this area are deteriorated. They've been that way for some time, and they're of low quality, which will only improve with the work that we're doing. Item 25 and 28 indicate there's no separation between the seaward edge of the pool and the beachfront area and the dunes. So I actually question whether or not the reviewer spent a lot of time looking at this, because I understand they're saying that this area through here, and actually the quote in the memo says, the beachfront area, including the top of nearby dunes, where neighboring properties each have landscaped and naturally vegetated areas, separating their pools from the beachfront areas and dunes. So our client wants to have a duneland habitat. These people have filled and extended lawns out in this area. So it feels a little bit like the comments like, no good deed goes unpunished. So we are actually trying to make sure that we've got native habitat in this area that's really appropriate for this. Again, the owner's aesthetic design is that they would like to keep this as entire coastal conditions. Item 26 and 31 request the applicant to provide clarity on the depth of groundwater. We have the project engineers reviewing that to make sure that we're going to be able to demonstrate the adequacy of separation distance for drainage and septic. Item 32 requests a confirmation from the engineer who designed the sanitary system that we meet the 2-foot separation distance between the highest expected groundwater table. I can tell you I've looked at the plans and in fact does that, but we're going to provide you a letter from the engineer that confirms that. And then item 33 asks for a calculation of coverage within a 125-foot setback from the existing and proposed driveway. Is there more driveway or less driveway within the setbacks? We've asked the survey to provide that, so Squires and Holden are working on that now. So we do have some additional information to get back to you, and we hope to have that back for the next meeting. But I just, kind of in closing, it's our respectful and collective opinion that this project really provides a net environmental benefit to the site as a whole. And given the unusual regulatory constraints that are dictated by the Dolliver line compared to the actual site conditions that you have on this property, that we believe this property is worthy for the relief that's being requested of this board. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ian Handback, just talk a little bit about the landscape plan that's been submitted to you, and then we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Ian Hambeck with LaGuardia Design for the applicant. So I think Rich touched on a lot of the great aspects of this project. I'm going to high level go over a few of those again and then touch on some things on the freshwater side that he didn't necessarily focus on or speak to in detail. I'll start by just saying at our firm, when we take on a project, we ask ourselves 3 questions. This is our litmus test. Is it an interesting project? Does our shared vision with the client align? And are we going to make a meaningful impact through our role as landscape architects on the project? I mean, when you think about the interesting question, obviously, this is the type of project every designer wants to be involved with. Coastal project, blue chip quality. I guess I would say that aside from the panoramic views that you get on the ocean side, looking out over the beach, we view the freshwater wetlands as equal to that in terms of interest and quality. And so when we initially met with the client, we shared that vision with them that we thought the freshwater wetland relationship needed to be played up and improved and restored. And they met that enthusiasm. They embraced that idea. They actually said it was a shame that the property was of such a poor environmental quality, dominated by ornamental landscape and lawn. And so they wanted to see that restored. So when we start to think about this idea of a shared vision and this enthusiasm around that, we have to ask ourselves, through our design process and through the regulatory process, are we able to make that meaningful impact? And I think when you look at this application, the answer to that question is yes. I mean, as Rich pointed out, on the existing property right now, it's a low-quality wetland. It's filled with Phragmites. There's a lot of lawn, there's a lot of ornamentals, but no natives of real note. We, at a very fundamental level, are going to improve that. You know, we're going to go in there and we're going to remove 3,000 square feet of invasive Phragmites. We're going to dig down. We're going to take that out of the soil bank. We're going to put in preventative measures to stop the spread of that and the regermination of that Phragmites. So at a very basic level, we're going to eradicate something that's problematic on site. We're then going to come back and we're going to establish over 30,000 square feet, almost 3/4 of an acre of native revegetation. And that's very important for a number of reasons. First, that's going to improve the water quality on the site, right? We're going to have a means of filtering the site runoff. We're going to be establishing plants that don't have a reliance on irrigation or fertilizer. So we're not going to be putting nitrogen back into the aquifer, feeding that Phragmites, feeding these invasives. We're also going to be creating habitat, right? We're going to be creating habitat for the wildlife on that freshwater edge. We're going to be creating a link for habitat to move between the coastal landscape and that freshwater landscape. And we're going to be reintroducing habitat with flora and fauna in a way that's not really present on site. And the important thing, and I think if you look up on the screen and you note these photos, the important thing that we're doing is, and all joking aside, we're creating something that's pretty, right? Something that's attractive. And that is meaningful. We see this type of project, regardless of jurisdiction, as precedent for development in these types of settings. And that needs to be attractive. That needs to be interesting for people who want to do this type of work if they're going to emulate it. We would love to see this type of project repeated throughout the village so that we're not just creating this link between the coastal and the freshwater sides of the property, but we're starting to move laterally east and west. And so through future approvals, we start to bridge between property and property and restore this habitat throughout Meadow Lane, just not parcel by parcel. And so I would put that last question back to this board. Isn't this the type of project that's going to have that meaningful impact on the future of the village, the way we see that it will?
Again, John Bennett. We're here to answer questions, although, as we stated, we are going to ask for an adjournment so that we can come back and talk about the second Nelson Pope and Voorhees memorandum. I will tell you it is a little bit difficult in terms of keeping the pace going and trying to be responsible and responsive. Only after we made our last submission on November 9th, last Thursday, did we locate by our own efforts a copy of the memo prepared by Nelson Pope and Voorhees dated November 7th, which is almost 2 months after the last meeting. Everybody's busy, but we try to move these things with some pace, both for you and for us. It had been uploaded to Dropbox, but we had to search for this. We kept on looking for it every day, expecting a memorandum for 2 months almost. And it was not until today at 11:29 that we officially received a copy of the memo from the village. And I'm sure, as all of you who run businesses and try to organize affairs efficiently, it's difficult. We're trying to respond to your questions and to your consultants' questions as thoroughly, as quickly as possible, and within the time frames. So we got waiting with bated breath for Nelson and Pope's. We had your comments, but we're waiting with bated breath for Nelson Pope and Voorhees' comments for approximately 2 months. And we got them, I think it gave us about, to be consistent with your time frames, it gives about 2 or 3 hours to respond, which of course is impossible, which is why we're going to ask you respectfully to adjourn the matter. But again, and I would just ask you to make some inquiry. It wasn't until today at 11:29 that I actually received a copy of the memo from the village. This was a memo that was dated November 7th. So I don't want to beat up on anybody too much because I think Nelson Pope, I've worked with them both in the private sector and the public sector, and they do a thorough job. They're very conscientious, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult to keep the pace of the project going when you have to wait for 2 months for a response to things, and then you have to search for it, and then you don't get it until after the response time for us is due. I would just a little bit of housekeeping that I thought it would be important to mention. So we can answer questions now, or we can do whatever you want to do. If there's some questions you have now, that'd be great.
I have a question.
Sure.
I agree, John. At the very least, you should be notified when something is uploaded to the Dropbox. I can't speak to how long it takes them to do the reports, but
Yeah.
you should be notified when it's live.
The criticism is not to any of the board members. You
We don't-
understand?
I don't take it
Okay,
like
good.
that.
Yeah,
I'm-
okay, good.
You deserve a timely notification that it's there. I just have a question of clarification. I'm looking at the topographic analysis that Mr. Warren spoke about, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may be. I feel like I remember the gentleman from Woods Hole Group talking about this property having a double dune at this point, or being only a few months or years from having a double dune, and is that reflected here in,
You clearly, our property's the yellow one here.
yep,
Clearly, there's changes in topography, there's rolling changes in topography, but the village codes speak specifically to the first rank of ocean beach dunes. That's what's in chapter 116, I put my notes back there, 16, whatever. But it's the first rank of ocean beach dunes that 80% of this village gets to use. And this is the first rank of ocean beach dunes on this property.
First rank.
First rank.
So then where is the second rank forming, northward?
Second rank is probably some relic that's back in through here somewhere.
Uh-huh.
We'd have to actually look to see where that is, but, you know, our position is that the coastal erosion hazard, this, when you look topographically, this red line doesn't even follow a crest of dune. It goes through hollows, and it was an attempt to try to, I believe it was an attempt to probably create something like a coastal erosion line back then when there wasn't one. But this is a completely barren area that's relatively undeveloped at the time. How do we control development when you've got this first rank of ocean beach dunes? Oh, let's just shove it way back so it doesn't happen out in this area. But we now have better science now, and there's been such a change in the beach conditions since the time that was done, that these dunes have
So
grown,
I
the
happen
beaches.
to agree with you and the case that everyone's putting forward here about the Dolliver line. You know, I suppose we can make a judgment on this case on it. It wouldn't hurt to bring something to the trustees as well. I think a lot of people would
Yep.
support
Yep.
a reevaluation of the Dolliver line.
Yep.
So then just my final question is, given that the first dune, given that we've gained so much beach, let me try to find the right question here. How sensitive or subject to a complete loss is that first rank of dune in the event of a storm?
I mean, look at the historical area photographs, and we've had some very significant storms. 2012, Sandy. I can show you photographs in Sagaponack with houses that are sitting up on stilts with no dunes around them. You didn't see anything here. When you actually look at the historical area photographs, we didn't see anything
Sure.
during that time period. And I think one of the things that actually really attributed to this area was, and I don't actually know the year of it, Lee might, if he's still here, there was a time when the jetty at Shinnecock Inlet, the eastern jetty, was extended longer. So when that jetty got longer, the longshore drift is from east to west.
Mm-hmm.
Sand is moving down the beach, and when you have an obstruction here, it creates a sand fillet that's coming out through here. So
Right.
this is part of the sand fillet, and that jetty is never going to change. So I think it's actually one of the more stable places in the village, and I tell that to clients when they're looking at properties. This is one of the more stable places on the ocean front, because we haven't seen the kind of erosion that you see in other areas when you go further east.
Interesting.
If
So-
I may, you don't have to be a coastal geologist. I would recommend highly that you all get on Google Earth Pro and look at the eastern side of Shinnecock Inlet and the western side. And you can see that the western side is, it's just tell like
Yeah,
it is, it's sort of star sand is a huge scour. But the eastern
Yeah.
side,
It's grown.
because the littoral drift, as Rich explained, of sand is from east to west, is probably the most healthy beach on the east end, and stable.
But it seems to me that it's, and I know this probably should be directed to the trustees, not you, but it seems to me that it's a bit unfair that 80% of the village gets to use a standard, where 20% has to use a standard that was established 41 years ago that's really not reflective of the conditions today. So, your comment's well taken. It's probably something we should take to the trustees, ask them to reconsider it. That doesn't mean that people are gonna start building out here, because you can't. Because coastal erosion hazard line is what's controlling. And that coastal erosion hazard line is, some distance back behind, it's like 80 feet back from the Dollar line on our property. So,
Mhm.
so people are still gonna be back behind that area, just that the conditions are completely different now than they were when that line was drawn.
Maybe this is a question for the architectural team, but can you point out, item number 3, proposed access stairway 64 feet from the wetlands within the 150 foot regulated area?
Do you want to answer that, Rich?
And John, for sanitary systems, 200 feet seems to be the standard out here. I think Ian can.
200 feet is the village regulation. It's the most stringent. Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is Southampton Town is the same.
No, 150.
150.
Ian, what did we do on Noyak Road?
Well, we're well beyond it, but.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Never
the
mind.
The town code is 150. I will
Yeah,
represent
yeah,
that to you.
yeah.
Okay.
Here's the wetlands line up here. This is the access stairway that's in front, that's on the north side of the home.
And those on Zoom can't see that, just so you know.
While you're looking at that, just to fill up the jurisdictional gap.
Yeah.
The Suffolk County setback for a septic system is 100 feet from surface waters. Am I correct? So this is we're trying to meet the most stringent
Sure.
village
Okay.
standard.
Do you mind zooming out a little bit?
This is when you need the music from Jeopardy.
Okay, well, I get the gist. It's on the northwest corner of the house.
It's on the northwest corner of the
Okay.
house.
I don't have any other questions.
Do you have any questions?
Do we have any public?
Wait, let's
Waiting
get-
in Zoom,
Joyce, do
anyone?
you have any questions? Joyce, can you hear us?
This is on mute.
Yeah, her thing is muted.
I think she's muted.
Yeah.
She's trying to speak.
No, I'm good, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Is there anybody from the audience who wishes to be heard, or Sage, is there anybody on Zoom that wants to be heard? Good, so we want to adjourn this to the next meeting on December 12th?
Yes.
Does that provide ample time to address everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a memo now, so.
Yeah.
Excellent. And we'll take the comment about the Dropbox under advisement, and we'll see what can be done to organize that.
Criticism of anybody in this room.
Yeah, we understand. We understand.
Okay, so I'll motion to adjourn, get the right case number, excuse me. Case number 3155, 1750 Waterview LLC, 1750 Meadow Lane. I'll motion to adjourn this case to our next public hearing, December 12th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thanks for listening.
And John, with the board's new policy, the materials are going to be due on Tuesday the 5th at noon. at our
Excuse me?
office. The materials are going to be Tuesday the 5th at noon to our office.
Okay.
Thanks.
Do they have that in writing or a
I believe
memo
it's
or
at the
anything?
bottom
So-
of the agenda.
I have it in my calendar.
Okay.
Okay.
Already. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Mr. Warren.
So we can move forward to new cases. Do we have Alexander D. Pisa, 213 Windmill Lane is the applicant here.
Yep.
Alexander DePisa.
Let me give John the affidavits of mailing.
I
and
have
posting.
copies right here. It's the same thing that you. Oh, great. Thank you.
Great. So, if I may, should I start?
Please do.
Okay. My name is John Bennett, and I'm from Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York, and Bailey Larkin from the office is with us as well. I think it's just us, correct? Yeah. Okay. Alex Pisa was trying to get here. I think he's in his car on the way from New York, but we'll start. And if he makes it, he makes it. This is a project that I've been looking at because it's relatively close to my office, and I think it's proud to say that I've spent a lot of money in my office over the last 35 years, and it's an area of the village that I'm happy when anyone wants to spend money on it. The property is just to the west of that Masonic Lodge / church on the corner of White and Windmill Lane. So I'm glad to see that someone, and that building, as everyone knows, is in a state of disrepair. I know there've been back and forth. There've been comments about spending some money to improve it. Nothing yet. So I'm happy that Mr. Pisa, even with that, has indicated a willingness to improve this property. The property is pre-existing non-conforming lot. It's in the OD zone, in the office district zone. It's improved now with a two-family residence. And the village code does something rather unusual, the same as the town code does. It says that a pre-existing two-family residence is a permitted use. Isn't that interesting? I don't think you can find that in any other code. Usually you have a pre-existing, let's say a pre-existing non-conforming, but a pre-existing two-family residence is a permitted use in this district. The existing two-family dwelling is over density because 20,000 square feet per dwelling is required pursuant to Village Code Section 116-5B3 and 116-11. I think that's an attachment 4 in the packet, and I think you dealt with this on the property that many years ago was Eric Woodward's office, and it's now a doctor's office. You recently had a decision where you recognized there was some over density, but you gave some relief there. What we'd like to do is, so this is a pre-existing non-conforming structure It's a pre-existing non-conforming structure used for conforming use and could be rebuilt in kind without variances if you just rebuilt it exactly. But we don't want to do that. We want to make a single-family residence as opposed to a two-family residence that is more in conformity with reasonable size limitations. We'll put a lot of money into the property, but also will reduce the fact that this existing lot with the improvements on it does not comply with the density requirements. Its proposal is for 2,838 square foot single-family residence. There's no GFA limitation in the OD zone. It's not a big house by Southampton standards. We submitted this request as an application for area variances. We don't think we need a special exception approval for this because it's an existing two-family house. But we'll go through the special exception standards, which we meet handily. However, we believe that a special exception permit is not required, since both dwelling units are permitted and we are simply removing one. And both could be reconstructed in kind. However, we have also appealed the determination of the building inspector dated August 17th with respect to the interpretation of front yard, lot area, density requirements, and the need for a special permit. So we'll talk about that at the same time as we talk about the variance. The bulk of the proposed habitable space, and you can see it on both Mark Schiffert's plan, probably best. Schiffer does, I think it was, no, is it Schiffer or the
McDonough and Conroy.
Excuse me?
McDonough and Conroy?
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, no, we have a Twin Fork surveying, which is actually very, very helpful to see.
Yeah, how can we put this on the camera so everybody can see it?
Sure, we can do it. Well, let me put it on camera. Tell me which way you want me to orient it.
Facing the board.
Okay. So this is the existing structure. What we've done here is...
We need to get it on the,
Oh, sorry.
stage. Can we get it on camera?
There it is.
Okay, thank you. So this is the existing structure. Bailey, you'll correct me if Bailey probably knows the file as well, better than I do. And what we've tried to demonstrate here is what I was about to say to you. The bulk of the proposal is either located in a conforming location or where the pre-existing improvements are located. These are the pre-existing improvements, that's the proposed addition, that's the proposal, but we wanted to show you where the existing two-family dwelling is, and then we showed you where the existing two-family dwelling is in comparison to the new proposal. But the bulk of this is either respects the pre-existing non-conforming setbacks or is in an area that is as of right in terms of the setbacks. Now, it's interesting what's going on here in terms of the setbacks, because our position is that the setbacks, and it's not only based upon our reading of the code, but also the way the village has handled lots on this access easement, including the lot at 205 Windmill to the south. The property is a pre-existing non-conforming lot burdened by the presence of a 20-foot wide access easement along the southerly property line. This is really important because it talks about the fact that we don't think the requests for relief are anywhere near in terms of a dimensional request as what the building inspector says. So there's this 20-foot access easement. The surveyors called it a private road, but it's really not a road under the village definition. Let me explain to you why. The easement serves as access to 4 residentially developed parcels to the west of the subject property. You go up the street, and there are houses up there, as everyone is aware. So the applicant's the owner of tax parcel 904-5130. We included a copy of the deed in the application package, which includes the access easement over the property. The parcel runs beyond the southerly limit of the asphalt surface. So here's this access easement, but the property runs to the south, well south of the paved area. This is the entire parcel. It includes this access easement. And I keep on calling it an access easement because it's not a road, it's not a street. This is the Village Code definition, 116-2. And I want to remind everybody that the Court of Appeals has probably on 3 occasions said that zoning laws are in derogation of common law and are to be construed against the municipality. So if there's any gap that hasn't been closed in this definition, I'm going to explain to you that there's a big gap as it relates to this access easement. If there's any gap, it runs in favor of the applicant. So this is the definition of a street. Why am I going through this? Because it makes the application for relief much less significant. This is the definition. Any federal, state, county, or municipal highway or road, none of those, or any street shown upon a subdivision plat filed in the county clerk's office. It's not one of those. There's no subdivision. These are what we call in the business described parcels. Or any private road providing access to subdivided land. There's no subdivision here. This is an access easement that provides access to described parcels. Any private road providing access to subdivided land approved by the planning board. Approved by the planning board. None of that's here. Here we have a specifically defined easement provides access to some residentially developed parcels. The access easement is not shown on any subdivision plat in the office of the county clerk. The access easement is not a private road providing access to subdivided land. There's no subdivision. Indeed, the access easement does not appear on the Suffolk County tax map. Suffolk County, the tax map folks over in Riverhead are not shy from creating a private road if they see one. This is not, you can look at the tax map and you won't see this shown as any sort of private road. I submitted with an application as Exhibit A, a copy of the Suffolk County tax map. Thus, it's submitted that the northerly limit of the access easement, which does not fall within the definition of street, should not be utilized in calculating the lot line front for purposes of setback, which is what the building inspector did. He took it from the northerly line, it should be from the southerly line of this access easement. Although relief from the, I just wanted to talk a little, although relief from the front yard setback, 35 feet is still required, construct a portion of the proposed residence, is submitted the relief to construct the proposed residence 23.5 feet from the front yard is required, where 23.3 is existing, rather than the indicated 3.5 of setback relief in the turn-down letter. So we want to construct a proposed residence at 23.5, where 23.3 is existing. And it should be not taken from the northerly side, but rather the southerly side of that access easement. And we also object to the inclusion of the area within the private access easement from the overall lot area. Village Code 1162 defines lot area of as the total horizontal area of a lot exclusive of land in the bed of any street, right-of-way, or waterway. It's none of those. Accordingly, since the access easement of the subject property is demonstrably not a street, as defined within the Village Code, the entirety of the parcel, including the portion burdened by the access easement, should be included in determining the lot area. We submit this by definition of alone, but that the applications, that our interpretation is correct, and we see no other fair or reasonable interpretation under the case law, where it says it's supposed to, any ambiguity is supposed to go in our favor. We don't think there's an ambiguity here. It's just, it isn't captured. This access easement is not captured within the specific definition of a road or a street. But we also included in our application a copy of a survey for the adjacent property to the west, 205B Windmill Lane, where a building permit was issued for the construction of a proposed swimming pool. The front yard setback was permitted to be measured from the southern limit of the property, not the northerly boundary line or access easement across the property. In addition, the entirety of the lot, that's 205B, including the portion of the property burdened by the access easement, was utilized in determining the lot area. And we submitted this as part of the application. So all we're asking for is consistency and asking for an interpretation which is consistent with the express language of the code. Consistent with this subject property, the legal description for the parcel at 205B Windmill Lane, that's across the street, across the access easement, I should say, includes the entirety of the 20-foot access easement, which burdens the southern portion of that property. And we included that deed. Further, the village building department has indicated that relief for the Village Code 116-5, Attachment 5, is required for the construction of a single-family residence on a parcel of less than 20,000 square feet in size. The denial indicates that relief to permit construction of one dwelling on a parcel of 6,263 is required. Again, the lot area should be considered 8,263. But again, as important as anything, and in terms of reducing the fact this two-family house does not comply with the 20,000 square feet per unit density requirement, we're proposing a single-family residence. So, and again, that single-family residence in effect exists as one of the uses on the property. So we don't believe that a special permit should be required, a special exception, but we'll go through the standards just to make sure that we meet them handily anyway. So again, if you agree with our interpretation on that, it eliminates the need for a special exception permit, but we'll go through the standards. So let's go through the relief that we need to permit construction of this single-family residence. The front yard setback of 3.5, if you believe the building inspector with his interpretation, where the 3.35 is required and 3.3 is existing.
What number are you on, John?
Relief. It's the relief where Tin is saying to permit the front yard setback. I'm saying we're actually behind the pre-existing front yard setback.
Number 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Proposed single-family residence with a rear yard setback of 22.5, where 30 is required, but again, 22.3 is existing, so no further encroachment. We're trying to take advantage of this pre-existing.
So you're just saying that if we followed your interpretation and we counted that easement as part of the property.
Oh, I shifted onto the rear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Luke. I've shifted onto the rear.
Oh.
I'll go back to the front.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of, in your view, you disagree with Tien's assessment of,
Yes.
and I'm just trying to get a sense of, in your view, what if it's not 5.3, if it's not 22.4, what is it in your opinion?
our opinion is that to construct the residence, it's the setback we need is 23.5 as opposed to the 3.5 from the front yard.
I see 5.3 transcribed in here. Is that incorrect?
23.3 is existing. We want to construct a 23.5. Excuse me?
Yeah, John, do you have a copy of the agenda? Because that's what we're looking at right now.
Billy?
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect?
That's incorrect.
Okay, but it
If you could
does
speak
say
to
5.3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, our survey shows on here, sorry, I just moved it on you, 3.5.
Okay, so
It's
3.5,
3.5.
not 5.3.
Yep, and then,
Okay.
and what we're saying is that the 20-foot right-of-way should be
Should be
included.
included.
So we would have 23.5
23.5
as our front yard setback.
That's what I'm trying to find. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that argument is, we say, is not only buoyed by the law, but also the way the village has dealt with the other parcels on this.
If we were to agree with your contestment of some of these interpretations, would that change the design of the house in any way?
No, it just makes the variance less in magnitude.
Which helps you.
Yeah, if you look at all, the literature, the case law, and the statute, and everything, it's, one of the things that you look at is the magnitude of the variance.
The more de minimis.
Yep, I'm with you.
Yeah. So it's important. I mean, it exists where it exists now, and we're really not trying to further encroach into it in any way. But we also are looking for some, additional square footage. So to the extent that, and in exchange for.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand your view versus the building inspector's view, so this is helpful. Thank you.
And I wouldn't make a big deal of it, other than the fact that I think that I have to go through the exercise to demonstrate that the magnitude of the variance isn't as much as it appears.
Yep,
That's all.
I got you.
Now, I lost my way. Oh,
Rear yard setback?
excuse me. Oh, the rear, thank you. The existing, Bailey, if you want to take the board through the existing rear yard setback and what's proposed.
Sure, the existing house maintains a 23.3 foot rear yard setback, and what we're proposing is to maintain 22.4. So just a slight increase, essentially where the existing house is right now. No further encroachment in the rear yard is requested.
Wait, this says 30 feet? Is that a typo also?
No, 30 feet is required.
Is required.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
Is required, correct.
So seeking what, like 7.6 feet of
Exactly.
relief in the rear yard.
Exactly.
But it's in an area that's already improved, but then when you move to the west, and correct me if I'm wrong.
We
that
increase our
we
setback.
come into conformity with the required setback.
This
Mhm.
blue
Yep.
square here is actually the only conforming portion of the property for
Right.
setback. So when they expanded the house, what they tried to do is propose any additional square footage as much as possible within that conforming location.
There is a little bit of a porch area that doesn't, but that's in the front, and we can talk about that. But I said to Mr. Pizzo when he had his architect design the house, the bulk of this new area, I want you to conform.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but this area would take advantage of the pre-existing non-conforming setbacks, hopefully. Then, I'm just trying to get through them because,
Basement egress stair.
there's an egress staircase 5.4 feet from the property line. This is the denial where 30 feet is required and 10.4 is existing. I was a little bit surprised at this because, you've probably seen this yourself, Luke. Usually the village has given you 4 feet of an encroachment for a stairwell. It's sort of like the
Is
Bilko
basement
door.
access?
Yeah.
Basement.
Yeah,
And
four
I-
feet is what the town gives you.
Okay. But
I don't know about the village.
well, I know as a matter of practice, they've adopted that.
Right.
I know they held the line at 4 feet. I had this conversation both with John Foster when he was here and Chris Talbot. They said they wanted to hold the line at 4 feet. It was similar to a Bilko door, or even sometimes even less. But they because what happened was people were getting greedy.
Right.
They would, the next thing you know, you'd have almost like an outdoor seating area. in
I do
these-
full-on walkout patios
Yeah, crazy.
where I can.
Yeah.
Do you have anything from a planning perspective on that?
My understanding is the building department allows 4 feet of encroachment for only when it complies with the side yard setback for zoning. So because this doesn't comply with the side yard, they don't allow that that level of encroachment.
Makes no sense at all.
I do find that to be sort of overlapping directives, and I just had this conversation in a town hall last week. Are you proposing for it to have concrete walls or like a landscaping wall?
Well, it's gonna be a concrete retaining wall, but if you wanted to have anything to buffer, a cap on it or something like that,
Sure.
we would
Okay.
do that. The other thing that I find interesting on this, as long as we're on this, Bill, you were able to cite that code section in terms relatively, where was that in terms of walls? Excuse me?
Yeah, there was actually a recent amendment in, I believe it was 2022, when they had increased, they included in the village code retaining wall legislation. And it was mainly geared towards FEMA compliant homes, and they required offsets from property lines.
Right.
They actually, when they adopted it, it had actually been an objection we had raised stating, what about basement egress stairs? Does the retaining wall legislation apply to that? They actually, after they adopted the retaining wall legislation, amended it, also in 2022, a couple
Okay.
months after, and they specifically excluded retaining walls associated with window wells and basement egress stairs from the offset requirements.
So Alex, let me ask you this. If I'm complying within my setbacks, then why would the village regulate the width of my basement access? What right would they have? It's not even an accessory structure, it's primary structure.
So I think the question is, why would they allow that level of encroachment beyond what the minimum side yard setback is?
Well, so I think you just said that they'll allow you 4 feet for basement access, provided that you meet the side yard setbacks. But if I'm meeting the side yard setbacks,
You don't need
why
the-
would I
the
need
special-
anyone's
yeah.
okay?
If you meet the side yard setbacks for the dwelling,
Yes.
you can encroach up to 4 feet into the side yard for egress. If the building doesn't meet the minimum, if it's too close to the side property lines, they don't allow that level
Okay,
of
so
encroachment.
the primary structure, if it is right on the line, but legal,
Right on the setback.
you can do 4 feet within the side yard.
That's what
Is
the
that
building
the
department
scenario that you
allows.
have, or-
That's the scenario that we have here, yeah. Yeah, that is the scenario we have. We would, correct me if I'm wrong, or do we?
I don't believe this meets the
explain.
side yard
No,
requirements.
the house itself does not meet side yard setback
Okay, there we go.
requirements.
Right, right.
Okay.
And so we're asking for further encroachment for the
Although
basement
I'll have
egress
the
stairs.
chapter and verse for you on the code amendment that excludes and affects subterranean walls on the next case. So
Okay.
I'll give you the next.
So Bailey,
The
is
next case we have.
is number 6 on tonight's agenda, is that related to the side yard that we're talking about here?
Partially. So the side yard setback here at 5.4,
Mm-hmm.
our total side yard setback is 41.2. We're proposing a 30.8 foot side yard setback off the west side of the residence.
Right.
Which is compliant with side yard setback requirements, but overall, we do not meet total side yard setbacks.
Although
I
meet
understand.
Although we meet the
Okay.
minimum side yard setback to the west.
Correct.
What is the total side yard?
60 is required.
60.
And we're at
Mhm.
40.
One.
And that's are you
41.2.
taking that, is that different if it was a residential zone, Alex?
It's a 60-foot aggregate side yard requirement in the OD zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Would it be
This is-
different if this was a residential zone?
I believe every zone has its own
This is-
requirements,
Right.
and depending on lot size
Right.
as well.
Oh, if it was based solely on lot size?
Yes.
And you were in a residential zone, it would be wildly different. It would be much smaller.
Right.
Much more, thank you, yeah. it would be
Right,
much
so you
smaller.
would probably meet it, so essentially you're trying to convert this lot into a single-family residential lot. Are you meeting if this were a residential lot
Right.
of this size,
Mhm.
would you be meeting the GFA requirements?
10,000, probably not. Let me think about this. Well, let me do a quick calculation.
What's the size of the lot?
It depends on how you calculate the size of the lot.
In the liberal way of defining the size of the lot, including the easement or the
Right.
right-of-way, what's the size of the lot?
It's 8,263, so what that's times 10, so it's, what's 1,500 plus 8?
About 2,300?
About 2,300.
Because I think, John, speaking only for myself, I
Right.
want to be sympathetic to your request to make
Right.
this a single-family residence,
Right.
but I do want to apply single-family residential setbacks and GFA to it, where I understand GFA is not a requirement for the OD zone, but if you're putting a house there, it should, or OB zone, but if there's going to be a house, it should meet residential requirements.
Let me have the conversation with the client.
Yeah.
You might ask for a little bit of forgiveness on that, maybe not as much as you're asking for.
Okay.
That's an interesting way to look at it, and
Yeah.
I think it's sort of fair.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let me talk to the client, and with that, should we have the conversation and then come back? Or we can continue on.
Well, I mean, let's hear my other
I
board
mean,
members'
obviously
thoughts.
subject to-
I would be prepared to make a decision on the challenges to Tian's interpretation of the lot, and that may help them. It may make them not have to go back to their architect twice.
What's the size of the current house?
What is it?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah. 4,019 square feet.
Is that right?
No,
No.
no, 1,019 square feet. There you go.
It's about 2,000.
2,000 square feet.
About 2,000.
And then Alex, as the planner, if you have input or guidance here on us, please, we're all ears.
I don't have a
Well,
memo
slow
from.
down. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if the house is only 1,019 square feet right
No,
now,
and one floor. It's
Right.
a two-story residence.
and you're going to 2 floors,
No, it's 2 stories existing right now. It has a footprint of
Mark,
1,019
let's get the
square
Okay.
number for you. Let's
We'll get you the
let's not
exact
guess.
number.
Let's get the number. for you.
okay.
And
Current
that's
square
the
footage.
question.
Yeah.
That's for both your
Yeah.
question, Mark, and as well as Louise.
And what's the proposed square footage?
2,800.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's
I
fine.
thought-
I guess I'm looking to Alex for guidance, and you don't have to answer right now, but if we were going to apply residential zoning to this based upon the lot size, what would our zoning code dictate in terms of setbacks, lot coverage, building coverage, and especially GFA?
You'd have to speculate a little bit because there's a lot of different residential zoning districts in the code. This is not.
No, it's fair. It's in the code. Let me see if I can find it.
Right, like we can assign it, like the smallest
It's
one
less than-
probably,
it's
right?
The smallest one. It'll be the smallest one.
Well, you can't, because,
Well, if it's office district, it's office district.
I know.
I'm trying to do by analogy. I understand what
Yeah.
Luke's doing. So, does anyone
What
have
would
a
the
code?
setback requirements be based on the lot area of this particular lot, which is about 8,000
And
square
the
feet?
GFA.
Bailey, keep talking. I'll
We
find
need
the.
to address the issue about the easement, whether or not it counts in the lots.
I am a little, let me ask, I'm a little confused on the easement. Are we saying that easement should be added to the size of everybody's property coming up that road?
Yes, it already has been. Across the street, the building permit added it.
Well,
It doesn't-
next door. So the easement only burdens on this residential parcel and this residential parcel. The two additional residential parcels that are on this easement do not actually have any portion of the easement on it. It's only on this property and the adjacent property to the west. And the adjacent property to the west was allowed to include that easement within their lot area.
205B.
Doesn't it
Yes.
affect the property does it affect 209 Windmill to the east?
To the east, the undeveloped parcel here.
Oh, that's 211,
It's like
right?
Yeah.
80.
And then what about 209? 209 it's not part of that lot?
I honestly don't have the survey in front of
Okay.
me for that one, but I can check.
Just let me get this for you, because it's an interesting question. If you could just be patient with me for a second. It's I should know it by heart, I'm sorry.
So Alex and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we are being asked to issue a special exemption to make it residential, we will have to apply some zoning standards.
You would apply the zoning standards of the district that it's in, which
In
is
the
the
office
OD
district.
office.
But by
district.
analogy, just like, let's
Yeah.
just say, it's less than 12,500. The front yard's 25.
Mhm.
The minimum is the total for side yard abutting the street on the corner of 25 feet. The rear yard is 25. They're much smaller. The total side yard is, can't find it.
Because
Oh,
it's based on 410.
Oh, it's 4/10. Yeah, it would be 4/10, which is, how wide, is about 100 feet? It's about 100 feet, so it's 4/10. 4/10 of 100 is the 40, which is the total side yard, which
Mhm.
we meet now, like,
Mhm.
and 4/10 of that is 16 feet.
Mhm.
So if you applied I know you're doing this by analogy in terms of if this were a residential lot. I
Right.
see where you're going. So yeah, it would meet all the setbacks. It would meet the side yard setbacks. It would meet the front yard, the rear yard. The challenge would be it would be bigger than the 10% plus 1,500. So let's talk about that. I think we might ask for a little bit of forgiveness because we are doing something. We're reducing the over non-conforming density. But let me talk to the client about that because I understand how you're trying to.
Right, I'm sympathetic to your cause here. I just want to make sure that it doesn't end up feeling like an overdeveloped lot because GFA didn't have to be considered.
I understand.
Well, and it has to fit in with the neighborhood, so I don't know what
Well, we'll
205.
get you some, Mark, that's a
Yeah.
very good point. Let's get you some character of the neighborhood analysis on
And that's only my opinion too. We still need to hear from Joyce and Mark and Tom and anyone else.
I agree with your opinion, your approach.
No, it's always been when you have an office district and a special use, we always had that kind of, well, then what happens?
Right.
We came across this on some other cases, and there's no answer in the code right now. But
There is no
yes,
answer.
it does make
No.
sense that you treat it as a residential parcel. Does the survey have a pool on it? Is that
It's under construction.
the pool? But it's in the office district?
Yeah, you can have a pool.
You can? Why don't you have a pool?
We should. We should.
Why don't you get a pool?
A pool on the roof at Bennett and
I'd have, you know what I would do? I would heat it, and I'm lucky enough to have a fireplace in my office, so I'll have a pool, I'll heat it, make for an interesting Friday afternoon. Thanks for that suggestion.
You can have a pool in the office district.
Yes.
Wow, that's great. It's a nice amenity. Okay, so should we adjourn this for all purposes?
So well, let's hear from, do we have anybody in the audience, and do we have Joyce Giefra?
Yeah, Joyce.
Yeah, I think that you raised a good question. Is that I think Mr. Bennett's going to come back and provide a little bit of context about the neighboring lots in terms of this development, and also some clarification about this minimum side yard setback, especially with regard to the egress stair.
Mm-hmm. Okay, agreed.
Oh, okay, sure, that's fine.
And I think we're gonna hear from a neighbor.
Okay, great.
Neighbors.
Sorry. Good evening. Jason Berg, BERG. My family and I live at 217 Windmill Lane. We're right at the top of the hill. And so we're one of the 4 houses that shares the right-of-way going through 213. I just want to make sure, our neighbors and I, or my neighbors and I submitted a letter to the board, and so just want to make sure that you all have received that. I think that it contains, the majority of our comments, or at least the key ones. But I'd just like to say, our main concern is to ensure that we still have access to the right-of-way. And I think that the setbacks and then, thereby the parking or the lack thereof is really our main concern. And then the size of the house feeds into the amount of parking that is required for the size of the house. And then I'd like to point out the fact that, it states that it's a 4-bedroom house and 2,800 square feet, 2,900. But if you look at the full, area, including the finished basement and the attic, you could really sleep kind of 6 bedrooms in the house, even if the attic isn't code. And so we'd like to make sure that, whatever house is actually approved for this lot has sufficient parking for the house that's built there. And therefore, we don't see basically whatever additional cars show up to this house end up blocking our right-of-way and then having issues, safety, ambulance access, fire trucks, et cetera. So, we'd like to see this house renovated and have someone live there. We just want to see that it's appropriate for the neighborhood.
Do you know who's maintaining that road now, or?
Well, so I bought my house from Bob Whitman, who was a longtime resident of Southampton. When we bought the house, he told us that actually the village paved it. But I think that at some point the village decided that they should not maintain it. And so I think there's a question. The village did put the asphalt in, as far as I understand it. But I think for at least, and maybe my neighbor Joe Beckwar can speak more to that, but they have not maintained it for a period of time.
What's the condition of it?
I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there definitely is traffic up and down, you know, with 4 houses. It's
Right.
a decent amount of traffic, so you can't just have kind of a one-way street. You've
Right.
got to have ability to pass 2 cars.
Right.
And so that's kind of one of the things that drives our concern there.
Yeah, if somebody's coming up, you have to be able to go.
And it's quite a long way, actually, so you can't really, you know, it's difficult to figure out how to get by if you don't have the space.
Sometimes you end up cheating over onto the lawn a little bit.
100%. 100%.
Well, the building inspector will be looking for adequate parking, and they'll have to show that on their plans.
Yeah. The plans right now is only 3 spots. And they're only 20-foot spots, and then you have the 20 feet of right-of-way. If you have a big SUV, you know, most people don't park right up to the front. You know, they don't hit whatever is the end of the parking spot. It's going to be hard not to kind of encroach on the right-of-way. You know, for anyone that's not kind of being super vigilant about how they park a car. And then, you know, you can't back up straight and make a turn to get down the road. You would have to back up into onto the property of 205B to actually pull out of those parking spaces. So
I get that. Alex, what do you think about only 3 spaces there?
I believe the 3 spaces are based on it being a 4-bedroom house,
Okay.
based on the floor plan submitted. As indicated as part of the denial letter, those spaces are not in a zoning conforming location. That's part of the relief that they're requesting in terms of setbacks. But that is how the parking requirement is calculated by bedroom or bedroom equivalencies based on the floor plans that were submitted.
And sorry.
Okay.
No, I would just ask the board, you know, if you're making accommodations, that we think about, if you're making accommodations, you can kind of decide what's appropriate for the accommodations and for the size of the lot and kind of the specifics of the case.
Right.
And in this case, this lot, because there's no parking anywhere else on Windmill Lane, it actually needs a lot of parking. I think you could park probably 10 cars in my parking area. 215, you could park a lot of cars there. 205B has 5 spots for about a 2,000 square foot house and a 4-bedroom. And 205A has quite a large parking area as well.
Google Earth actually shows you with a ton of.
You can see
cars in your driveway.
yeah, you can see all of my vendors in my parking area.
Well, I think it sounds as if they want to be good neighbors, and it sounds as if they may be revisiting the plans a little bit.
Great.
So maybe
Thank you.
can address that.
Appreciate it.
Did you, I'm sorry, Jason, I didn't mean to.
No, no
hold you
problem.
up. Did you, after you bought Bob's
Yeah.
house, did you do any renovation or?
We did, yeah, and we actually renovated the attic and added sprinklers, and so that was fully approved and it's all up to code. So I think that added probably about 350 square feet. So our total now is about 3,200 on half an acre, just for comparison.
But you didn't expand the footprint?
No, not at all. Yeah, it was within the existing.
Okay.
Yeah, because I
Anything?
think the question that Jason's also raising is, you know, what about, there's no landscaping currently. What if they started to do plantings and narrow the road? Anyway, we can cover that.
Yeah,
you
that's,
know. But as I'm looking at it, if you started to, but there's no landscaping in front of any of the properties as you're going up that easement. But your point's well taken.
great. Thanks so much.
Good evening. Joe Beckwar, BEC, WAR at 205B Windmill Lane. Just to set the record straight, my house was renovated in 2007, 2008. We didn't ask for variances on anything. We were conforming to the pool. Our footprint was the existing footprint of our house. We didn't ask for anything from this board other than approval of the plans to go forward. So,
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
to my knowledge.
Sure.
So we put our pool based on the setbacks, and at that time our survey showed the side of our house was the road on the side of our house was the setback, not across the street, and that's what we based our pool setback on both sides. The back side of our house on White side and the front side to the easement. right? So we didn't ask for any variances whatsoever in this. And actually, we didn't add to our footprint. We added on the second floor, we redid our second floor.
Right.
But we weren't asking for any variances whatsoever. And they were very hard on us about parking at the time. And we had to have at least 4 to 5 spots per bedroom. It was a spot per bedroom, as we were told at the time. We're still at 2,000 square foot.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at 2.5 acres or 2.4 or 0.24 to 2.25. I'm not sure which it is. He's at 0.19, and he's got a 1,921 square foot house on there now. That's the same size house as mine, basically.
Mm-hmm.
A little smaller. But, he's asking for double that in square footage
Mm-hmm.
without any additional parking. And that's where we run into trouble is today, even with his trucks on the road, we couldn't get past. There's no passing this. So if anyone parks on the street, there's no passing this. There's no fire truck that's getting up the hill. There's no ambulance that can get up the hill. We, as residents, can't get past if someone parks on the street. And so I think that's the main thing. And historically, this was a road at one point if you go to the Historic Society, it was called Annie's Way, and it had a name, and that's why the village paved it. And they kept it and maintained it all up until like maybe 6 years ago when they decided they were no longer going to maintain it. They didn't give us warning. They just stopped. They used to come up with the snow plows. They've patched it. They've done everything with this thing. They just arbitrarily decided that we're going to change the plan. So when I got my first survey, my survey starts at the side of my house, not across the street with 2 extra feet on the other side of the easement. But then when we had it redone for our final plan for our CBO, that's when it changed. So when we first submitted our plans, we weren't part of that easement as far as our setbacks. It was what it was, right? And so now everything's kind of changed because everybody wants to change how far the setbacks are.
Yeah.
We weren't given that liberty. We were given nothing, and we worked within that, And
Right.
I would have built a much bigger house possibly if I had the opportunity, but we didn't want that. We wanted to maintain the historical part of this house being it was built in 1886, I believe, originally, and we maintained a lot of it.
So, I hear you.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm dealing with the same thing. I have construction
Sure.
trucks blocking my road right now.
It's not
a-
it's
a pain in
not
the
just
neck.
a truck. It's anyone who parks on that street. It makes it very difficult to pass because on the other side there's a hill which goes into bushes, and you can't really pass on the other side either.
I mean, that may also be sort of a code enforcement issue if people are parking halfway in the
So now I have to be code enforcement for if we're going to do a zoning and we're going to have ample parking proportion to our lot size, I shouldn't have to zone or I have to police my neighbor because someone doesn't want to make sure that they have enough parking for their house.
Believe me, I'm not arguing.
Okay.
I'm just adding context.
No, yes, I
Can
understand.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you put the swimming pool in,
Yes, we did.
and so you were not required. But the building inspector counted the right of way as a street that
No.
wasn't yours, right?
That's right.
Your property line. was right
Our
on the
property line
street.
started on the side of the street that our house is. It's 20-foot setback on both the front and back side and side of my yard.
So you actually benefited because hear me out. Going by that way of thinking, that means you have a swimming pool in your front yard.
No, I have the setback that they told us we had to have a 20-foot setback. Even if we went across the street, we would have been within the 35-foot setback because we put it within the setbacks of what they told us to build it in, so we didn't need a variance.
Well, the setback and the road frontage, not to conflate the two, road frontage is, as the name implies, frontage along a road, whereas setback is how far something can be, and under the village code, you can't have a pool in a front yard facing the road.
It was considered a side yard for us. I'm not sure. I know that we.
We'll pull,
okay,
Alex, could
you can pull my
pull
file
their
and you can look
file,
at it.
just circulate
but
to the board his
yeah.
survey and whatever he did,
Absolutely.
and how he was in compliance. And if you could as well, just give us some history on Andy's Way.
Mark,
Yeah.
I'd ask if you could send it to me as well.
Of course.
So I'm just here to say, you know, we worked within the boundaries that we were given set at that time
Right.
with this board, right? We didn't ask for more, we didn't take more, we didn't want more. We wanted to work, so we didn't have to be here tonight arguing over if there was enough parking spots.
Sure.
Right?
Look, and we're
So-
not arguing.
And
happy
and
to
I'm
hear
not
your
arguing
thoughts
with
on
you,
it.
I'm just saying to my neighbor who wants to build this house and doesn't want to put in ample parking for his residents. I'm sorry, can I speak?
You're good.
I mean, honestly,
We're gonna-
you know, it's insulting to understand that 3 parking spots for a 400 or 4,100 square foot house on a, if you look at your square footage, John, it says 4,100.
Don't worry, just
Okay.
talk with us, please.
Anyway, I apologize.
Okay, we're
So
gonna
we
get the
understand.
history of
Yeah.
the neighborhood.
They're not big houses.
They have to be here because they're trying to change.
I
from
get
a
it.
two-family thing in the office district to a single family thing. So they have to be here.
I get it.
Even if they weren't.
I get it, because I'm in the same district.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally understand.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
We're gonna find a compromise. That
Okay.
Is a win-win.
I'm
for
not
everybody.
telling Alex not to build a house either. I would like to see a new house there. It's caused my house not to be valued as high because this has been sitting for 5 years now.
Right. He could build
you
a
know.
Carvel there.
He certainly could, and
That could help
that could help
No.
traffic my way too. So I appreciate
No?
that.
No.
As long as he has the parking,
Okay.
Carvel is
a
retail.
Carvel with a
Retail's not
pool.
permitted.
That's what he's after. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Luke,
We're gonna hold it over anyway.
I just want to answer your question more completely about the parking, if that's okay?
Please do.
So the basement floor plan is open basement, which does not count towards the parking requirement.
Okay.
There's a single bedroom labeled on the ground floor and 3 bedrooms labeled on the second floor.
Okay.
The half story is labeled as a bonus room, so that does not count towards parking because you're allowed a living room and a bonus room or a living room and a den. So that's how the parking requirement, it's counted based on the bedrooms and bedroom equivalency. So
Right.
as a 4-bedroom house, they're required 2 spaces, which is required for every dwelling, plus 1 for every bedroom in excess of 3. Because there's 1 bedroom in excess of 3, that's how they arrived at 3 stalls as the
Okay.
parking requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
And in terms of impeding emergency vehicle access, that doesn't work for anybody. So we
Right.
would, whatever conditions the board want, and we'll talk about those later. But also, in terms of during construction, I know that's a real pain in the neck.
Yeah.
So what we probably should give you is a construction methodology to make sure during construction, there are places for marshaling, cars, equipment, supplies, materials, et cetera. That's a very, very fair question. I've dealt with that myself.
They're gonna park in your parking lot and walk over.
Over, well, I like my clients, but over my dead body.
Okay. All right.
Quick
look,
question.
We can find a workable solution.
Quick
Thanks.
question for council. I apologize if I missed it earlier.
Jason,
Was there
do you
a
wanna-
recorded easement agreement or anything for that road?
I think what happens is the deed runs to the southerly property line, and it says, subject to an easement.
Ingress and
So
egress.
there's no separate standalone easement document.
That's what I was
It's created
wondering.
via the reservation, in the deed.
John, do you have a take on this?
I would have to take a look at TN's methodology on why he thinks that this is a road, or maybe a road by prescription. If it's true that at one time the village did treat it or pave it or maintain it as such, but if it's inconsistent with prior decisions of the board or any other agencies of the village, and that historically all of these lots have been given the square footage, including the easement area, then I think that the board should be consistent with that.
And I will tell you that under this, one of the things I got from being a municipal lawyer for many years, which typically municipal law can be about as exciting as watching a snow shovel rust, but one of the things I did, not zoning law, not municipal law, is there are very specific steps that have to be taken for acceptance of a road into the public system under the state highway law.
Mhm.
And there's nothing that demonstrates that. These are just reservations in a deed. But whatever you.
Does anybody know when the road originated?
Well, it's not a road. It's
Or the right of way.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
No doubt. We can ask. We'll ask Rusty Banks from South Bay Abstract to
Understood.
look at the chains of title up and down there to see. Probably just people started reserving, conveying out described parcels, and there was a reservation of the right of way, and that would be my guess.
And these weren't on any like ancient subdivision, old file map, anything?
No, I'll take a look at my 1916 Belcher Hyde in my office and see if there's any definition.
We need you to speak
Come on
into
up.
the mic.
I have a copy of the Belcher Hyde I can look to.
If you look at the maps at the Historical Society, it does say Annie's Way.
Right.
So that's what I looked at, and that was as late as 1920, 1930. That's what they had there. They didn't have, there was missing some maps in there and stuff, but that's how long it's been there. And that's, if you ask Mrs. Etheridge, who's been up there 5 generations, she would say, yes, there was a name on this street, and that's the name. So
it's possible.
Yeah. And maybe they just named it arbitrarily. Who knows,
Annie
right?
might have lived at the top
But
of the hill.
there's over by OLH. There's that little alley, right?
That's dedicated. That's a public street.
That is?
Okay. Yes. Same thing. It's the same type of road that this is.
And
Yeah.
we've made decisions backing up to that road. So we're familiar,
okay,
and everyone has some research to do. And
Okay.
so
Luke, I want to answer your question you asked earlier about the building department, and I think what it says on the agenda is that they're using the definitions in 116.2 for lot area of and lot line front, which use phrases like right of way and street right of way.
Okay.
So I think that's where that language is coming from. That's the subject of the interpretation request.
So I think it's crucial that we see TN and get maybe a memo from him and see what his methodology was.
Yeah, but you have to.
We can ask for
You have
that.
to look at the definitions. You can't do it in a vacuum. You have to look at the definitions in the code. It's just he just can't willy-nilly.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
and
Declare
those
this
are the
a street.
definitions I'm referring to.
And I went through that, and you'll see it doesn't include it.
No, we understand, and I was following
Okay,
that
I'll just
there's a
say,
difference
I'm
between a
overall
road and a
more
right of way.
concerned with just doing something here that's consistent
works.
with what's there with the other homes. So that I know those are the guidelines I'm going to try to follow. But go
So
ahead.
I would just ask that we don't stick to the statutes where it's convenient to stick to the statutes, and then we're doing variances where it's not convenient. So I'd like to look at this holistically and think about it, in an equitable way, rather than, necessary, and just say, okay, how does this whole thing work for everybody? And what I'd like to, for the board to please consider is, although the basement is not included in the square footage that's been submitted, I would say that someone's going to live in that room and it's going to potentially function as a bedroom. Similar to the attic, that has the potential to function as a bedroom, which is going to draw vehicles to this property. And that's the thing that we're concerned about, because if those vehicles can't park in those 3 spots, they're going to park in the right of way. And that's going to cause the rest of the neighbors a real problem. So that's at the the fundamental thing that we really want you all to please consider. Thank you.
The good thing for you is that should that ever happen, there's a mechanism for you to remedy that situation, and it is just talking to your code enforcement officer.
Yeah, but that's their point. They don't
So-
want to have to make that phone call.
We have to
right,
do.
but we have to look at the application that's been submitted.
Yeah, that's
And,
the
well,
that's
if-
the Ira Renner case. You can't presume a violation. You
Right.
cannot presume it. That's the Ira
If the plan is drawn meets the parking calculations and the adequate amount of parking is being provided, then that's kind of the end of the analysis. And we understand absolutely your concerns.
But we're providing variances, and because of the variances, this is actually a very special lot. And so it's not like any other lot that would be conforming in every other way and therefore have that number of spots. This is a non-conforming lot, which if you don't provide enough parking is going to impact the right of way. And that's what we're really concerned
Look,
about.
it's an
Let me ask
interesting
this
part of
question.
the
What's the
village.
parking
Thank you.
And
requirement
we've
for
had
commercial?
a couple of applications around
I
this
just
area.
want to make
Yeah.
sure we're
I
not
promise
talking
you,
at the
it's
same
going
time.
to get looked at
Thank you.
very carefully.
Yep.
There's no layups, slam dunks. It's all going to get very carefully parsed.
Yep, thank you very much.
Mark, to answer your question, the parking requirement for commercial uses depends on the specific use. There's a table in the code, I believe it's under 116.14. For if it were office, it's based on the size of the building. It would be 1 space per, I think it's 180 square feet of office space. That's the same rate for retail, but every commercial use has a different parking calculation in the code.
But a guideline would be one space for every 180.
180 square feet of office space. If
180
if it
for
were.
office, 150 for retail.
I thought it was
We
the
have to
same,
keep
but
in
I'd have
mind
to
that
double
the
check.
blocking a right of way is blocking a right of way. That's, you know, a code enforcement issue. It's a safety issue, and that's kind of a little bit broader in the scope of just granting a variance. Obviously, we want to make sure that the code appropriate amount of parking spaces are provided, but
And that
we
is
can't
a
budget for
special-
all kinds of scenarios.
No,
Right,
my
and that's a
question then
special
is,
exception
why are
code.
we jumping to a residential parking requirement in a commercial district?
The parking is based on the use, not the zoning
Right,
district.
So in the office district, does it provide for what would happen if it was a residence?
Yes, it's
Yes.
the same as a
Mhm.
residential.
So it says it will follow whatever?
Yes.
Yes, it's,
Okay, that's in the office district guidelines.
yes, it's
And
for
what would be
all
interesting, I'll take a look at
all
what the,
districts.
what the requirement is for two-family house. It may be four.
Exactly. Or require a variance.
Yeah, it's four, so
that's
we're
what I'm
actually
saying. Then we would have more
reducing,
latitude to say
reducing the
you need more parking.
And
Mark, it's important that you hear that, and Thomas. If a two-family house, the requirement would be 4 parking spaces. So we're actually
Yeah.
asking for 3, so that's an important element.
Is this the homeowner behind you?
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything to the
No,
conversation?
I can say just something very quickly.
Follow your lawyer's
I
advice.
just want to say, all I want to say is
We need you to
my name
introduce
is
yourself.
Alexander Pisa. I'm the owner of the house. I've been working for several years to try to put this puzzle together. It's not easy, okay? There are, you know, I have now tried to accommodate all of the neighbors' parking concerns, which I thought were very legitimate. I really was happy that they brought them to my attention. And I reduced it to 3, you know, I mean 3. I've had it at 3. And, you know, having more than 3 on that particular property is insane. I mean, if 5 parking spots would just be, or 4 would just be all parking and the home. That's it. You know, just a parking pad with a house. So you really cannot accommodate more than 3 parking spots on that property. But one of the things that's very important is I push those parking spots forward so that the easement is complied with, the 20-foot, and then enough space for the actual cars to pull in. I also made the basement a basement. So it's not a bedroom, it's not anything that resembles anything. It is a basement. And that little attic room is just a little adjunct thing that I don't think anybody's gonna sleep in because it's the size of a hallway. So it has nothing to do with the parking.
And candidly, it may or may not survive the.
Who knows, but whatever, it's not. But the point of the matter is that, you know, I own the land on the other side of the right of way, or whatever you want to call it, and pay taxes about 4 feet or so, you'll see it precisely, on the south side of the asphalt. So I'm paying taxes, you know, to the property line, the
So
south
that,
property line.
hedge is yours?
Yeah, up to the hedge, not the hedge, but
Not
up, not the hedge, but up, it's 4 feet, it's 4 feet or so on the south side of the road, of the street, or whatever, the right-of-way, whatever you want to call it. So that's what, I'm explaining that, it's not just, you know, I'm paying taxes on it, I own the bed of the road, or the bed of the easement, or whatever you want to call it, and I definitely want to design something that functions, you know, well, and I just want to try to avoid incessant redesigning of this, because it's really been difficult. I mean, the architect has worked incredibly hard through various, you know, different requirements. There's also accommodating a new septic system as well. You know, is in the proposal.
Well, that's for everybody.
For everybody, but it
Yeah.
still has to be fit inside the space. But that's it. That's all I wanted to say. You know, that's all I wanted to say.
John heard the initial parts of our comments about square footages and everything.
Okay.
And he'll relay that, and you
Yeah.
can rewatch the
Yeah.
meeting.
And I just wanted to say the existing house is 2,038 square feet. That was measured. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm gonna motion to adjourn for all purposes.
Do we have any other comments?
We don't
Mrs.
have
Kiefer, did you have any comments, or?
No, I think I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, let's adjourn for all purposes. I don't have a case number, but we'll call it Alexander D. Pisa, 213 Windmill Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of an adjournment until December 12th?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks for your comments.
Okay.
There's some nice guidance, thank you.
And just to note, we'll correct there's a typo on the agenda. It's correct on the denial letter. The 3.5 must have gotten transposed as 5.3, so sorry about that.
We'll end up talking a lot on this in the next month. Okay.
So we can go to case number 3161, Miguel and Gabrielle San Pietro, 81 Lee Avenue.
Good evening.
How are you?
Okay, I'm fine. We have requested relief from yard setbacks
I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself?
in our property to locate.
Please, for the record, introduce yourself.
Sorry, Miguel
Please
Sampietro.
introduce yourself for the record.
Yes. My name is Miguel San Pietro, and it's in reference to the property in 81 Lee Avenue. And the reason why I am here is because we have requested relief from yard setbacks in order to locate a shed in our property in the backyard. The location that we have chosen in the backyard, from our point of view, is the only available location. This house was built around 1967, and the house, as the garage, as the pool, they're all at the end of the backyard, at the end of the property. The location that we have suggested or proposed has certain advantages. Number one, you cannot see that from the 81 from Lee Avenue.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you. Can we put the survey up on the screen? Alex, are you able to do that?
I have to get into the Zoom, so it'll take me a moment, but
Okay,
I can.
go ahead. We just want to
Okay.
have it on the screen, their survey.
Okay. You cannot see that from Lee Avenue, and also is very is not visible by any one of our neighbors. We have in the backyard a wooden fence, 6 feet, and in addition to that, we have 20 or 25-year-old trees on our side of the property before the fence, and the same happened on the other side of the fence because, you know, these properties are quite a few years old. Then there is no possibility to see that shed anywhere. And that's basically it. There is nothing else.
Tej, you able to let me into the Zoom?
We're just going to put the survey up on the screen.
Okay.
Is there another location?
Here's the street, right? So back here, that hides it from the street. You can see it on the map. There's a lot of planting here.
Yeah, no, I saw that.
Have any of the neighbors, have you spoken to your neighbor to the north or your neighbor to the west?
I haven't spoken with them, but I have sent whatever is required
Sure.
with the necessary time, and I do have here all the proofs that everybody has been notified.
I think, does John take?
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, we'd keep those proofs.
Please.
Oh, excellent. Do you need copies or?
Well, if you can give me a copy, let me see if I. Yeah, that's it. Yes.
If you do need copies or scans, we can provide them.
Well, no, not at the present moment, as long as you keep them.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me afterwards, I won't have them.
They stay with the public record. Thank you,
Okay,
though.
that's very good.
So is that an active driveway, the garage? Is there a driveway going to that garage?
Well, there is a driver going to that garage, and the garage is completely covered because there are certain hedges in this area. Okay, you cannot see the garage, even the garage from the avenue, and obviously the shed that we are talking about is behind the garage, and is completely covered, and.
So it is a functional garage.
And all the other sides are covered by that 6-foot fence plus enormous trees on both sides.
Who that is, how far they are from, that would be the person most affected, don't you think?
Pretty far away.
Yeah, the shed from the street, I believe that is around 304 feet.
Yeah, so that's their backyard.
This is their backyard.
That's two properties though on Heady Creek, right? Yeah.
This is one, this is another one,
Yeah.
there's another one.
Okay, so they're not likely to
This,
complain.
no, and this house is close, but they're, you see the elbow, they're kind of turning their back to it. There's probably not much of a view from there to there and there, up here.
Do you see another location where he could put the shed?
Where I would put it, probably.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I'd
nice.
try to hide it.
Do we need a survey, an actual survey, or is that, I don't know if that's drawn to scale or?
No,
we can
that's a
actually use
survey.
that.
It's on the survey.
But who drew it on the survey? Who, did the surveyor place it on the survey?
Yes, somebody did it, yes, professionally, on top of the survey.
Was an original copy of the survey submitted to the ZBA?
Yes, yes,
I believe this is what we have in the application.
yes.
There were some other documents as well, like this document, which is a copy of the survey.
But in other words, do we have enough, if we granted this variance, do we have enough on record that would show us exactly when it was built, if it conformed with what we're seeing here?
Yes, I believe so, and it would be built according to the board's decision in terms of setbacks, and the building inspectors would have to verify that in the field.
Joyce, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. I think my only concern has been addressed in terms of that if the garage is not visible from Lee Avenue and there's, sufficient screening here with a hedge.
Sorry, we have the whole property in the backyard is covered by a 6-foot fence. And in addition to that, we have trees that some of them, they date back over 25 years old in all the property. Number one, on our side, on this side, on the neighbor's side, those are probably older than that because they are enormous. And all this is covered by enormous trees. There is no
Alex,
way
are
that
you
you
able to
can
show a
see,
visual?
and we did provide photographs of the,
Yeah,
of
we're
the
gonna put that
area.
on the screen too.
Ah, okay. Yeah, some of the trees.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, Alex, go to the next photo. It's, yeah.
Yeah, as you see the hedge that I was talking about, that covers the garage. There's no way to see the garage. And we are talking about locating a shed behind the garage. There is no way that you can see that. There is
This is the garage.
this is the garage, behind the garage.
Okay, thank you so much.
What's the reason for the separation requirement?
The separation requirement, I believe, is 20 feet, and it will be 6 feet on that area.
No,
Right, and I think that the chair is asking about the requirement that buildings be separated from one another. As 5
Yes,
feet.
it's,
Yes,
I
that's-
think is from 5 feet to 2 feet.
Correct, that's
Correct.
that's your request, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that the code gives the trustees legislative intent in that. I think it's probably for aesthetic purposes and also to ensure that buildings are not combined into the same building. It's the same requirement that accessory buildings be set off 5 feet from their primary structures.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
Is there
Comment.
anybody from the audience who?
My name is Don Morea. I represent Mr. Liegel, who's the next door neighbor at 67 Lee Avenue. He's totally against the shed being close to him like that. He feels that his valuation of his property is going to go down. His pool, swimming pool, is right next to where they want to put the shed, and he doesn't want to see the roof of it. That'll be sticking over his fence.
So his property, I'm sorry, let me.
He's to the north.
He's to the north.
This is Mashat or 67 Lee Avenue.
He was called out to go back to Germany, or he would have been here. I'm his project manager, so I came instead. He gave me a letter explaining his desire.
Okay, we'll take the letter. Is he aware of the height of the proposed shed?
I'm presuming it's over 6 feet, that's for sure. 12 feet is usual. And his pool and his sitting area is right close to that. And there was some concern over the blocking trees. Would any of those go down?
Sorry, the blocking trees, if I may say.
So we need you to
his side
come
of
to the
the property.
microphone if you're going to speak. Otherwise, we can't hear it on the recording.
So I guess the question, Mr. Sampietro, is can you slide the garage to the south?
Sorry?
Can you move the garage to the south?
The shed.
The shed, I'm sorry. Keep the garage where it is and move the shed to
Where
the
is the
south.
property that,
To the north, on top.
Next door, yeah.
the next door, well, there are many next door.
Uh,
The
to
shed-
To the north.
Okay.
And then
You're
what, the
talking
square
about
above,
that and
yes.
about that pool, that is
Yeah.
very far away. And number two, you have there trees that they're over 25 years old, and they are as high as probably, I don't know, 35 feet.
It does appear as if those hedges are much taller than the shed.
Of course.
Well, I'm just asking if there's any real inconvenience to you to sliding the shed to the south.
To the south,
Yeah.
to where? I don't have any other location.
Well, you're
Because
keeping
if
it,
I put
keeping it behind the garage. Can you?
Yeah.
I'll look
It's-
at this,
I mean,
the
I can't
survey,
put the shed
maybe.
on my
It's,
pool.
it's plenty of room down near the pool,
Where?
south of there.
Alex, I don't think
Yeah.
he's actually requesting any relief for his north property line.
Correct.
Correct.
It's shown here as
Ah.
26 feet,
It's
which
26 feet from the
complies.
property line?
Yes,
Okay.
the variance is from the, I guess it's the westerly property line where it's, where it shows 6 feet.
Correct. The other one is 26. I am complying.
Correct.
And number one, if somebody's seeing the other property, could be probably me, because, you know, when they build that property, they build that at 20 feet, and it's very high. And unfortunately, I didn't say what I was supposed to say at that time. But anyway,
What's the height of the garage?
the height of the garage is probably is over 10.
They're normally about 12.
12.
And what's the height of the proposed shed?
Mm-hmm.
The shed is
Yeah.
only about 8.
No.
It's, the
No
shed is
shed.
12 feet
Yeah.
wide by 16 feet long.
Mhm.
Yes.
I don't see a height.
The height is,
It's a very shallow pitched roof.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we need the height. I mean,
Mhm.
for even.
Do we have
if
any-
Grant the variance, we need elevations.
I would say elevations. And are there any photographs which show the extent of the shrubbery between 67 Lee Avenue and this property?
Alex, can we show that, the shrubbery?
You're looking for the aerial view?
Or no, any views from the ground level?
Only that what was submitted with the application.
The height appears to be around 9 feet, but we'll need confirmation.
Yes, all that.
We'll need a real drawing showing that, though.
I have a drawing, but I can't see the,
Yeah, it doesn't list the height.
Why don't we do this? We're leaning toward approving of the variance as long as it's substantially lower than the garage.
Oh, yes.
Especially since, but we need to see elevations.
okay.
Is that a fair statement? I didn't mean to speak for.
I agree with that. I just want to make sure, do you understand what the request is? So we just put the shed and the garage, a two-dimensional drawing side by side, and just measure the heights of
Okay.
each.
Mm-hmm.
All right. No, but definitely, I think the height of the shed would be less than 3/4 of, no, even less.
Yeah, that's what, we just need to see a visual
Okay, very good.
representation.
It will be helpful for your neighbor too to understand, I
Correct.
think. And you can probably mail it to him or email it to him.
Yeah.
And just for
Yeah, he was concerned they'd be taking the trees down that are blocking. He has some on the fence line, but there are others that
No,
no trees are going to be touched.
nothing is going to touch.
It's a prefabricated shed.
Yeah.
They're gonna back
We-
in and roll it off the truck.
We build them.
And, yeah, so.
And I remember 67 Lee Avenue. I used to clean the swimming pool there in high school and in college. And as I recall, that was a pretty good big green wall on the south side of the property
Yeah,
there.
they're
If
not
things have
doing-
changed in 10
but
years, I
they're not
don't
doing
know.
well. The ones that are there are turning brown. The first 3 are really, if he has pictures, I think they're dying. And so it would be the ones that he has there
That are
for the
maintaining the
blocking
screening.
of the view. Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
let's move on.
I can give this to,
So let me motion to adjourn for all purposes, case number 3161, 81 Lee Avenue. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
So just for clarity, we're awaiting confirmation of the height of the structure
Elevations.
and elevations.
Yes.
Okay.
And those will be due to the building department on December 5th at noon in a hard copy and also in a digital format.
If you want us to hear it at the December 12th meeting. If it's not in by then we'll just postpone it to the following January meeting.
Okay.
I think the question I would have is if I can be here in the presence of
Yeah, I won't be here.
Could you just identify yourself quickly for the record?
Natanya Sampietro.
Great, thank you.
I'm Miguel's daughter.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we have.
Because I will be traveling, unfortunately.
No problem.
Okay?
Yeah. No problem at all.
There's something
great,
called
this
an
is the
owner's
letter?
endorsement
Do you
where
need
the
a
owner
photocopy or
can
do you have one?
allow
Yes.
someone else to speak for them and represent. So if you can fill out that form with your dad's signature, we'll add that to the file. Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, case number 3162, Sydney, hope I pronounced this correctly, Guevara and Sally Antoine, 146 Halsey Street.
Excellent, thank you.
Good evening, board members. For the applicant, John Bennett and Bailey Larkin from Bennett and Reed. So we submitted the application of mailing and posting. There are 3 items here. One is a request to build an addition which would require relief at a front yard setback of 29.9, where the existing residence is, from Cooper Street, where the existing residence is located 17.8 from Cooper Street. And that's only about 88.6 square feet of relief. And then there's a request for a pool. But the thing, if I can, that I'd like to get to first, which is probably the smallest part of it, is this window well issue. Because the denial stated that we needed relief for the window wells on the north side of the property. And let me just show you. Again, I just want some consistency here. And as the way as I've understood it. Should I wait for the camera to pick it up?
Yes. Sage, can we pick it up? Or Alex, is it easier for you to project it?
It's better for the applicant to do it, please, then he can refer specifically to what he's addressing.
Thanks. So the house is, we're holding true, we're gonna lift up the house and put a foundation in. So that, that we're not taking down any part of the house. We're just asking for some additions here. And the only addition that needs relief is this about 90 square feet front yard, which I'll talk about later. But there are two window wells, stairwells, excuse me, on the north side of the property. One holds, and the house conforms. So it's not the situation before where we wanted to ask for relief and then get the benefit of that practice. The house conforms. One of them is, the westerly one is 3.5 feet into the side yard, and the easterly one is 3 feet into the side yard. And to me, that was always consistent. I don't understand the denial letter, because to me that was always consistent with the latitude that the building department gave for stairwells. For years, it's been the custom to allow 4-foot encroachment into the side yards, such as they did for even more extensive ones for Bilco doors. And then we did find that local law section that Bailey and I were talking about our last application. It's local law 11202 noted that the restrictions on retaining walls, quote, do not include walls supporting subsurface features, including but not limited to stairwells and window wells. That's an amendment to Village Code 116-112-I. So I think both by practice, I know I'm starting with the smallest part of the application first, but I think by practice, the village has always allowed you to encroach with a stairwell 4 feet into the side yard. And here, again, we don't have the situation that we had in the last one. This is a conforming, side yard conforms. So I would disagree with the turn down letter. It just doesn't seem consistent with prior practice.
What do you think?
I know in this case there's a reduced side yard because it's a non-conforming lot with respect to width. The lot is narrower than the zoning requires, so that grants some relief built into the zoning code for the side yard setback.
Yeah, but that's
yeah.
not relief. That's what the zoning code says.
That's true.
That's not relief, Alex. That's what the
So
zoning
wait,
code says.
are we saying that this
Setback.
conforms to the, let me make sure I have my directions,
Side
the northerly side yard, that the house conforms?
Yep.
With the 4/10 relief, does the house conform? It looks like it's
There's-
coming awfully close to
There's an
the,
exception from the 4/10 relief
Right.
for non-conforming lots that are narrower than they are required to be,
right,
which is applicable in this case.
right,
So
so,
the 10-foot conforms. It's not relief. It's what the zoning code says. Relief is what this board gives.
Do you agree that the 10-foot conforms to the code and the?
The 10-foot for the primary structure, it does appear to conform.
Yeah.
I believe the denial was only written with respect to the basement exit and the window well, which encroaches into the 10 feet.
Okay.
By less
Do you have
than 4
insight
feet.
into the building inspector's thinking on this?
I don't have further information. I don't think this was an interpretation request, so he didn't provide an explanation to that.
Got it.
Did we notice? Well,
It
did
was
we
not-
notice it for an interpretation, or is this for a straight variance request?
It wasn't indicated on the application as an interpretation,
I didn't think
so it
it
wasn't
was called-
noticed.
Yeah, because we didn't think we needed it.
what you were saying before is if the house conforms with the side yard setback, that we would permit a 4-foot egress to the basement.
That's my understanding of how it's typically applied. This may be a different scenario because there's a different provision that governs the side yards.
Why?
Okay, we can get clarification
No,
from
no,
the
let's
building
talk about
inspector.
that.
No, right now, that's not, I mean,
Well,
you
no,
may
no.
be, you may be fine with it. I don't
Yeah, no,
see an issue.
But understand something. Relief is what you have the power to grant.
Mhm.
It's a misnomer to say that a code section which establishes yards is relief. That's what the code section says.
Right. I think the easiest avenue, though, and sometimes we've seen in conversation between the planner and the building inspector, some turn-down letters have been amended in recent times. So, you know, Alex, having sat through this hearing tonight, may have some additional thoughts to share with the building inspector if he's comfortable with that.
And just to make sure, I get the difference between the prior application where I was asking for relief. It's sort of a double dip to say, oh, give me the relief, and by the way, I get to go and encroach into the 4 feet. But this is not that situation.
Sure, I get it.
Yeah, that's all. So I just wanted to talk about that first because it has a lot of bearing on, I think, a lot of stuff that you're going to see. So then talking about the relief for the addition, it's relief, I think it's upstairs, downstairs for a dining room, and it's on the first set of Mark Schiffert's plans. In terms of the floor plans, it's downstairs for a dining room and upstairs for a bathroom. Just this 88 square foot sliver, 44 feet on one. Let me make sure the camera can pick it up again. 44 feet on.
John, can I ask you a favor?
Sure, anything.
As you bounce around, can you reference the point you're talking to the line item on the agenda, just so I can follow you?
Okay, I usually don't do that. Let me find an agenda. Thank you.
Do we have a blank copy?
Oh, thank you. So it's number 1, decrease the minimum front yard setback from 30 feet to 21.9 feet for Cooper Street. And this is for this sliver of it's the sliver of the of an addition. The rest of the addition to the north complies. It's just this little sliver. And the house itself maintains an existing residence of 17.8 feet. And we want to go to 21.9. 30 foot is required. So we'll be well behind the existing southerly edge of the house. And it's the type of variance that I've, gosh, over the last 40 years, probably been granted 50 of them. I'm well behind the pre-existing non-conforming aspect, front yard aspect, with the addition. I'm even going less than it, and it's tiny.
Can you go to page L101, because I think it's a larger view of the same image? Yeah, it's in that packet that you're flipping through. Yeah, it's in the back, John.
Oh, okay. Interesting, we put it after 301 and.
Okay, so we see the southernmost red dotted line is the front yard setback.
Well, let's try to get something on the screen so
Okay.
everybody can.
It actually is one helpful. So, is it up? Yeah, the red dotted line, the southernmost, is the required front yard setback. As you can see, a large portion of the house, because the house is well before zoning, it's probably over 100 years old.
Here's the setback. Here's the existing house. He's not, Tien isn't making any comment about that. Right, so the request is, am I correct, John, that the request is not actually the whole sliver which you represent in solid gray?
Thank you.
It's just from
It's about 2/3 of that,
Cooper Street to the first red line.
correct, right in
And not just the existing house.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in line with the existing house.
but because the house is previously not full, it still is.
Right, but it's linear, it's.
So it's tiny.
Okay,
Yeah.
clear.
So we don't think that has any impact on the character of the neighborhood. We don't think it has, it's a very minimal variance. It allows for this addition to be proportionally correct. There's no impact on the environment. And of course, part and parcel of this building is we're going to put in a new IA system because I think we have a bedroom count issue. And of course, so I don't want to belabor that unless the board has any questions about it. It's an infinitesimal request that allows for a much more comfortable layout for the dining room and the bedroom. And it's not further encroaching, so it's not going to have any impact on the neighborhood at all. It's behind the pre-existing non-conforming established front yard, and it's quite small, purposely.
Joyce, do you have any questions, or should we just keep moving? Okay, let's keep moving.
No, I think we should keep moving ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say, we might actually get out of here before. My record for this board, by the way, is 4 o'clock in the morning.
Seriously? Really?
Yes, absolutely. That was about 25 years ago. So you'll, Alex will talk to Tin and report back to us about the stairwells, and then if you have any questions about this small addition to the house, let me know, but it doesn't appear at this time.
John, is the entire house getting lifted?
Yeah.
Had any thought been given to turning it a little bit to be more in line with Cooper?
I'll tell you what my issue is with that. I really usually rail against against some of the historic restrictions because I think they're overly emphasized. But the house is over 100 years old. It's not in a historic district. It's not designated as a contributing structure. But I know even in those instances that the ARB, who I'm going to have to go to, gets concerned about shifting and moving things. So I prefer not to have that argument in the ARB. They're very sensitive to moving the location of an older house like that. Has been my experience. Even
Fair
when
enough.
Even when it's not a contributing structure.
Did you request a demo permit and get turned down, or you didn't ask?
We didn't ask. I mean, my advice to the client was, if you can use what's there and put an addition on it and not ask for it,
right?
Don't ask for it, because it would be subject to those. It would be subject to having the ARB take a look at it for that purposes.
So tell me about the location of the pool, because we have the existing garage oriented one way. It seems to be lined up with the west property line.
Well, we took a bite out of it because we have to be 5 feet. There has to be that 5-foot separation.
Got it.
Number one, and then we put it behind. Again, we took it out of the front yard. Maybe not the conforming front yard, but actually, out of the conforming front yard. We took it out of the front yard. We made it comply with the 20-foot minimum on all the other sides. We gave you some photographs of the neighborhood to see that it's a common accessory structure. Usually, in my experience, the big stop for this board over the last, ever since that 20-foot requirement came in, is you guys want to hold the line on the 20 feet as it relates to neighbors for noise attenuation. So we made sure that was the case, and we located it based upon what we thought, and we put the applications in, and you can read them. Were some similar grants. There was a Hawks Hill grant on Pulaski Street in North Willie, which is 20.4 feet from North Willie. Across the street, there was relief for a pool in this Gleason decision, the Gleason decision, which is part of the application, which right across the street on Cooper's, which I used for 2 reasons. They gave them a 300 square foot addition. They're only asking for this little 88 feet on the house in a non-conforming location, and there was a grant for a pool, which, similar to this case, didn't meet the setback, but was in the it was in the de facto front yard of
if the pool were rotated 90 degrees, right?
Right.
You may not need to take that chunk out of your garage, and you may open up more of a walkway, void space. I mean, you still need the same
I still need the
variance,
yeah, it's still the same
but
variance,
it
but when you look at it,
saves,
definitely.
it may save some of your garage,
Yeah,
and it has the effect of, visually at least, putting the pool further away from the street.
Okay, I will definitely go back
Yeah,
to,
just as a precedent, we might, if we look at our precedents,
Mhm.
this board, granting 25 feet where 40 is required
Mhm.
may conflict with some of our more
Recent
recent
decisions.
decisions.
Mhm.
I might not be able to justify why we would be granting it here, but not, and I have to go back to, but not having granted in several other situations.
Right. But I
So-
think rotating the pool and moving it north and maybe playing with the proportion of it, maintaining the same amount of square footage of the pool, but maybe a little less rectangular and appearing more square may satisfy Mark's
Okay.
comment, because we have done a lot of pools and we have tried to stay very consistent.
Very good. Let me look at the dimensions of the pool, the orientation of it, and the, yeah, let me look at that stuff, go back to the client, because I don't want, I try not to push you guys into an area of uncomfortability, so if we can remedy some of that with shifting the orientation and the dimensions, and maybe even a little bit of the size, let me talk to the client about that.
Yeah, or even taking some more out of the garage. Whatever, but 25 out of when 40 is required is probably going to be conflicting.
Okay, we can look at that. Okay. It's not inconsistent, I'm not gonna go
I
there.
agree.
I'm not gonna
It's
go
not
there.
inconsistent with some
I'm not
decisions.
gonna
We
go
know
there.
that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. At this point, anyway.
It's the landscape plan, right? So there's gonna be a line of privet along the garage, driveway, and Cooper.
Whatever the board wants in terms of visual screening, whatever you want. And clients will sometimes say, why do you say that to the board, whatever you want? Well, listen, if you want to create a visual buffer, we're going to give it to you.
Anyone from the public?
Johnny, you sure?
Sure.
We know who you are, but introduce yourself anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, let me give you some room, Jen, sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all. So, my name's Jeff Broadleib, and for your benefit, that's B-R-O-D as in Delta, L-I-E-B as in Bravo. Okay, great. I reside at 166 Halsey Street. My wife is the owner of the property, Lida Barkley Ely. She, by her good graces, lets me live at the same residence in return for mowing the lawn and cooking. And in full transparency, I have been on the Architectural Review Board for over 8 years, at one time serving as its chair and now a member. But I come before you tonight as a resident. Before I begin, let me ask, have the board members actually driven by the property and seen the property and driven up and down Halsey Street? And I don't ask that in an insult, to be insulting in any way, just I would show you pictures.
No. Do you have pictures?
I do. I'm just going to have to work with Sage to get them up. So hold on one second. Sage, I'm going to link in, and hopefully we can share this, because I don't want to take a lot of time. Okay, now let me go on mute.
Even if you could email them over to Sage, because we do need to keep copies in the file.
Okay.
Or email them after the fact to Alex or myself.
Yeah, they would
Okay,
have to
hold
be
on.
sent to
Let
the
me
building
just
department.
Okay.
figure this out. I'm a little bit technically challenged here, folks. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you pictures. John, I don't know, you do have some vision. Thanks. See, in opposition, we can still be friends.
Jeff, what were you asking?
Just pictures like a Google picture of the house.
We have a Google Earth shot of the neighborhood.
No, I wanted a visual in the front.
Hold on a second.
Somebody's got to mute.
Jeff, before you get into it, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you going to be speaking for or against the project?
I'm speaking against the project.
You will hear this project.
Eventually,
and then-
and I want to speak to that as well, Luke. I understand that it will, so part of my objection is on the merits of the application, and I will be speaking to the application as it's been submitted as opposed to the interpretation that you brought up.
Sure, and I want to hear you out, but
Yes.
I also want to know that you're going to recuse yourself
Yes.
from that ARB.
Yes.
Well, that's
Yes.
his choice.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think it is, Mike.
so
Or let
let
him talk with his attorney.
right.
But I'm not going to
So
require him to
let
recuse
me
himself
let
if
me
he's
let me
here.
answer the question to both of you and to John, although I understand I'm speaking to you. So should our counsel, Alice Cooley, require that it be appropriate or require that I recuse myself? Of course I would. I recognize that. Oh, thank you. Okay, this is great. This is a Google shot. Let me put it on here. Great, thank you, John. So, yeah, I do, and thank you for bringing that up, Luke. I appreciate that.
I'm not trying to get in
No,
your way. I
no.
thought it was codified that we shouldn't speak at other boards.
No,
that-
it's as, I'm sorry. It's subject to the
It's a
council.
factually specific.
Yeah.
He doesn't lose his rights as a private citizen.
Right.
Merely because he's a board member.
Right.
He can come and say what he wants. I would 100% agree with you. He has to recuse himself from the ARB though, because he's taken a position. And
Yeah.
I don't think this up to him. But I will say, in this board, he doesn't lose his rights as a private
Right.
citizen. I'm just trying to help.
Yep.
Please, continue.
Look at
See?
that.
Yeah,
Well,
go
friends.
ahead, Jeff.
So, and again, I'm here responding to the notice as it was written and as as it's on the agenda. So, in terms of the interpretation that John was talking about, if that changes things, so be it. So, I'm going to refer to law. I'm not an attorney, and John can give you, full. He'll tell you what the law is, whether it's so or not, but he'll tell you the law. But also common sense, because to a large extent, the law that applies here is based in common sense. And I refer first to the New York State guidelines, which are Section 7-712B, which are the overriding state laws, which I assume you're familiar with in terms of in making its determination, zoning boards should apply the following: whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood; 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant be achieved by some other method more without the requirements for variance; whether the requested area variance is substantial; whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district; and whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. That's a lot of common sense. Our village code works that in. It's not as succinct or as clear, but I'll go through the village code and how it applies or doesn't. But I think one of the first ones is that any of the requests for variance, this last one, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Well, it was. The property was recently acquired. The property is a 118-year-old house built in 1905, according to Zillow, and it's been on a 1919 subdivision, the Halsey subdivision. John is right. It is not within the historic district, but it does have historic character, which speaks to the entire character of that area. And as I get on later on, that's been recognized in the master plan as one of the possible extensions of the historic district. So I think taking the historic nature of the house into consideration as the variances would essentially neuter the historic value of the house or the components of the house, it's a consideration. Because it's not in the historic district and because it's not a landmark house at this point, that's not saying that it couldn't be at some point. And I spoke to Alex about this, it does by procedure come to you first. This is one of those situations in which perhaps that's not the best order of things. And that can be discussed with you. I know the chair and I, in cases in the past, have spoken about this when something is in the historic district. This is sort of in that gray area. But so let me speak to the codes as I understand them and how they apply here. So our code, the first criteria is strict application of the chapter would cause practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships. In this case, the strict application would merely result in the applicant not having the luxury of a swimming pool or a subterranean rec room as it is on the plan, or a home office in the basement, or a spare bedroom. So these are personal desires, and they can't be considered as difficulties or hardship, especially when the house was purchased in full knowledge of what it was, a small house, 100 years old, on a 9,000 square foot property. The second part of code 11627C-2 is such variance is the minimum variance that will relieve such practical difficulties or hardships. Well, again, I don't view these as difficulties or hardships, especially when they were known going into it. But the requests are not small. And again, I'm going by the code. So the request to decrease the minimum front yard setback from 30 feet required to 21.9 for Cooper Street is a 27% required reduction. I don't think that's de minimis. While the existing structure is 21.9 feet from Cooper Street, that's a pre-existing 118-year-old house. The new construction would exacerbate, not minimize, the non-conforming aspect. Now, it's technically in the same footprint, but the granting of that variance would encourage the applicant to, and if you look at the design, which eventually, as you say, Luke, will come before the ARB, strips away the historic nature of the house. And that's not your purview per se, but at the same time, there's been discussion here about the historic nature of the house, and it does impact the neighborhood and that is part of your purview. The second part is to decrease the minimum side yard setback from 15 feet required to 6.5 for the window well, again, and 10 feet to the structure. How that's interpreted, I don't know, but based on, or I don't know how it's going to end up, but based on the requirements, that's a 57% reduction from the requirement to the window well and a 30% reduction to the structure. Again, that's not de minimis. The request to decrease the minimum distance from the street for the accessory structures from 40 feet to 25 feet to construct a pool is a 38% reduction in the requirement. Again, not minimal and not for a pool. The third part of the code under section C is the requested variances, well, in this case, are in direct contradiction to the spirit of the general purposes and intent of this chapter, which is 116.1. And I point out 116-1-M states as an objective, the ZBA is guided to conserve and reasonably to protect the natural scenic beauty and cultural and historic resources of the municipality and the environs. As stated above, these variances will ultimately result in a neutering of the historic value of the house. Again, that's an architectural component, I realize, but when in this, the way it's being processed now, the granting of the variance opens up the door and gives almost implicit approval for doing that, and at great risk to the nature of the neighborhood and the historic value. The variances requested and resulting changes to the structure and the views from both Halsey Street and Cooper Street are detrimental to the character of the neighborhood, as I've said, and counter to the guidance of the building development in accordance with the business plan, master plan. 146 Halsey Street is one of the oldest houses in the neighborhood. It reflects the character of similar vintage houses on the street.
Jeffrey, let me
Yeah.
just to be helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
and
please.
You can take this for what it's worth.
Okay.
We are going to look at this house because of our jurisdiction as if it was built any year.
Yeah.
1970.
Yep.
We're not looking in any way at the historic character of this house. We have our guidelines,
Right.
which in no way, I truly hope, in
Yep.
no way anybody can interpret what we decide as an indication of anybody's opinion with
Yeah.
respect to the historic character of this house.
Right.
We are in two completely different worlds.
Yep.
All we're looking at is whether there is a detrimental effect upon the neighborhood with respect to setbacks, size,
Right.
And things like that. Our purview and our criteria, I think, are completely different. So whether we, and I think this is probably the most efficient way to do it, whether we ultimately, as this case evolves, grant certain variances, I wouldn't think that the Architecture Review Board is in any way bound or even influenced by our determination
Right.
that it complies with our balancing test of whether there is a benefit to
Sure.
the applicant that outweighs the detrimental effect upon the neighborhood.
Right.
And when we consider the detrimental effect, we are not considering the historic character of the house. So anyway,
Right.
go ahead. But
Yeah.
I think we're
Right.
don't-
At the same time, the granting of the variance, particularly as it involves the pool, does impact the visual. It's 25 feet from the road versus 40 feet that's required. You know, there are some lots that just shouldn't have pools. 9,000-foot property, you know, that's a non-conforming property that dates back over 100 years subdivision. Just, you know, is not necessarily right for a pool. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't other pools in the area, but why do we have to copy the worst of things? This is a corner lot. It's visible from Halsey Street. It's visible from Cooper. You're going to put a pool by granting a variance 25 feet from the road? Hedges, you know, when things come before the ARB, hedges, we make the statement, and I don't want to conflate, you know, the boards, but we do make the statement that bad storm can knock down the hedges, and it's visible. So it's not a permanent barrier. And putting in a fence, that's no benefit to the visual nature. Now, also in putting in the pool, and you brought this up, Luke, is that it would require a partial demolition of a potentially historic structure, or at least a structure that's over 100 years. Now, that would require a demo permit, which should go before the ARB because it's over 100 years, right, Alex?
It's for the garage.
But the garage, accessory buildings require a demo permit and the same treatment as a structure.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're gonna come back with a pool plan that doesn't. And that may occur.
That may be. Nonetheless.
Can I add a little bit of perspective just
Sure.
to add on to what Mark said? So we have the luxury of just very black and white interpretation of the
I know.
code. The fifth point that you did call out, right, does have a caveat because, and I think we've even heard John say this here, is that in a sense, every application to zoning board is self-created, right? And that's why the state says that this fifth point shall not be the determining factor. And if the fifth point is the only one that an application doesn't meet, that is not enough for us to reject it.
Right.
Right? Additionally, the code doesn't deny swimming pools on corner lots.
Right.
It makes restrictions about setbacks. I think historically this board has been sympathetic to swimming pools, and we do view them as a right for homeowners. And this is the place
Right.
where folks with smaller lots can come to appeal those decisions.
Right.
I hope that you have a lot of comments aesthetically when we're not you, but the board.
Right.
Because you can see in these renderings, it definitely loses some of the
Yeah.
charm versus the photographs. But that's for the architectural review board to
Right.
talk
A-
about
and-
fascias and
Yep.
and things like that.
Right, and for sure, and I recognize that, and I recognize the flexibility, and I'm trying to make the point that granting the variance would allow, at least as presented, a pool of substantial size within very close distance to the street. If the pool were made a dipping pool and in the corner of the property and something like that, yes, of course you have that privilege to do that. And yes, that might be acceptable to the ARB when it comes there, and I'll be out in the hallway and, you know.
And you know, Mark has raised the same concern previous, you know, just before.
Yeah.
His feeling that it is close to the street. So
Yeah.
we'll work that out.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyway, it will come before the ARB, and at that point, I will be absent, which is effectively a no vote. But I would hope that the applicant does take this into consideration, because the comments I've made personally, I know are reflective of some of the comments of the neighbors. And so, a word to the wise may be sufficient, that respecting the historic nature of the house is going to facilitate eventual approval. So, okay.
Right. Well,
That-
encourage the neighbors to write letters.
That they will. That they will. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Is anybody else from the audience?
Is Ms. Giefra with us? Does she have any questions? Or?
Yeah.
No, I think everything's clear for right now. Thank you so much.
Sage, is there anybody on Zoom that wants to be heard?
I have no hands right now.
Okay. Do you want to adjourn it for all purposes?
Yeah, I just want to, just a couple comments, right? Otherwise I'll forget. First of all, thanks for the guidance. We're going to go back and look at that pool design and orientation and size and all that sort of stuff. But it's just a couple of comments in terms of Jeff's comments. Even in the historic district, the Board of Historic Preservation and Architectural Review has absolutely no jurisdiction over pools. So that's a finding, clearly.
That is correct, yeah.
That's not going to have any, I think that's a finding. So the ARB is not going to have anything to say about this because they don't have any jurisdiction over pools. The other thing that's important, and you guys know this and your council will tell you, these, the old, unnecessary hardship and practical difficulty standards, they're really a vestigial aspect of the code. There's a Court of Appeals case, and I'll get that for you, that says the state, when they changed the law as it relates to you guys, preempted the field. So it's the 5-part standard. But with that, I'd ask for an adjournment, and I thank you for your guidance and input, and we'll take it back to the client.
Can I ask one favor? When you do come back, what I think is helpful to us, or at least especially to me, when it's an addition, can you ask Mark, the architect, to put existing and proposed on the same page?
Yeah.
So we can look at south,
Thank
we
you,
can
because
look at,
and I always tell people to do that.
Okay.
I always tell architects to do that, but,
It's not on this plan.
I'm sorry.
It's not on this.
no, he has a page of existing, and then he has another page of proposed, but
Yeah, I like to see it
if you
that way
mix them,
myself, yeah.
it's nice.
No. I always tell them, particularly in the ARB, and so
Okay.
please do that. Thank you. So if you could adjourn it at our request, that'd be great.
Could I just ask a question? I'm going to ask the building inspector to confirm the denial letter as it's written. If he stands by it the way that's written, is this going to become an interpretation request? Because I just want to make sure we reflect it and advertise it
Well,
appropriately.
sure, yeah, I think would be totally outside the scope of the statute that I said. And if I may, you can say no to this request, but when you sit down with Tim, I would like to be present. It's my client's application. I'd like to have input on it. You can say yes or no, but I don't know how I've always, for years we've been rolling with that idea. And again, I will say I've had very specific conversations with John Foster and Chris Talbot. They said we're going to hold the line at 4 feet because the next thing you know, you've got people having essentially a patio in the back and really taking advantage of that rule on stairway access. So, but 4 feet is stuff that we've been doing for years.
Gotcha.
I'm
I
scratching
bring
my
it
head.
up just because if we have to re-advertise it as an interpretation, we have a very small window with Thanksgiving to do a new advertisement for the.
Well,
the
if you want to
12
put it in
meeting.
that way, go ahead. It's
How
probably-
how long do you think it will take to talk to Tien? Will you see him tomorrow?
From tomorrow, but we would need the application materials to reflect that. So we would
Well,
need
I'll just do a letter amendment. What do we have? Did we, because we didn't ask for it because we didn't think we needed it. And then there have been multiple turn down letters on this.
Well, did your application end like all other relief as
Yeah,
may be
yeah.
necessary?
If you want us, we can amend it with an application. If it's okay with the board, tomorrow we can amend the application just by a letter amendment to add relief if necessary. Didn't it?
It is on there.
It is
Required.
Yeah, so we actually put it in there. I'm sorry, it said if required.
Well, but I think what the application asks for is a variance rather than an interpretation.
It says if required.
It's omnibus, correct?
I don't think there's any notice requirement, Alex. I don't think anyone's being fooled here.
Alex, is there, I know Southampton Town has it, so I might be getting confused, but they have a specific code section that talks about basement access, commonly known as Bilko
Yeah, they have a Bilko
doors.
door, yeah.
Does the village code have a line like that?
I'd have to check.
No.
Okay.
No, I
They
can tell you
don't?
right now.
But I
I can
don't.
tell you right now, the village code does not have a Bilko door specific section. It's just, it's been that way for
Okay.
60 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if a building inspector, with the knowledge of all of the village itself and everybody involved in the village itself, creates an interpretation of that nature, it effectively, in effect, gains the force of law. I'm very surprised that there's even any discussion about it. Even in your own practice, you've seen that 4 feet has always been fair game for these stairway accesses.
I have had experience with it.
Yeah.
Not in the village, but.
Yeah, no. And the the town code talks about Bilko doors, but it doesn't talk about stairwells. So it's just been a very reasonable, rational interpretation. But then if you look at that local law, 11 is 2022 does not include wall supporting subsurface features, including but not limited to stairwells or window wells. You could argue that it allows for even more than 4 feet. And all we're doing is asked to stay in line with the custom. I don't quite understand why.
Well, that I don't totally agree with, just
Okay.
if we're getting into it, because
Okay.
it is part of the house and not really, I wouldn't call it a retaining, like a landscape retaining wall.
But
I do agree that basement access isn't, or in my practice, we have found that basement access in other towns doesn't usually get called out by the inspector if it's in the side yard.
And I would agree with you on your last point. It says including but not limited to stairwells and window wells, which have to be attached to a house. Yeah.
Yep.
What do you want to do? I don't think you have a notice requirement by doing this with the notice that you have right now. Everybody's seen the plans. The issue has been discussed. You have one objectant here, which is knowledge. I'll do whatever you want to do. I think it's this sounds pejorative. I think it's a little bit pedantic to ask to re-advertise it. But if you want to do it, you should just go ahead and do it.
I would prefer, me personally, to treat it as an interpretive thing instead of just a standalone zoning request.
What we'll do tomorrow is we'll make a letter amendment and asking, we'll get it to you, and we'll ask you to, we'll challenge Tin's interpretation on this as well.
Okay.
And that way, that should give you enough time to get the notices out, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I just want to be clear, because as you know, there's different standards for an
okay.
interpretation as compared to an area variance.
Okay, belt and suspenders, yeah, it can't be criticized that way. All right, thank you. Bailey, can we do that? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's move on. We're going to adjourn for all purposes. Case number
Thank you.
3162, 146 Halsey Street. Can I have a second?
A second.
And all in favor? And then
that's
I'll
to the
motion
next
to.
meeting on,
The next meeting,
23rd.
we're going to adjourn that to December 12th, our next
Yes.
meeting. And then I'll
And then
motion
before
to-
we totally
Yes.
disband, I just wanted to mention,
Sure.
for work session, that we have provided a draft 2024 meeting calendar. So TJ prepared this based on the board's meeting practice in the past. So right now, this is just for you to look at in contemplation of adopting at a future meeting. She's flagged a couple of cases where we know that there's holidays that are in conflict, and there's a couple of months where we would end up with back-to-back meetings on adjoining weeks, which wouldn't be possible, so we would have to work around that. But that's for the board to.
Do you email
look at.
that to Joyce and Julia?
Yes, we'll ask that we do that tomorrow.
Not Dropbox, but just a separate email?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then I'll motion to adjourn for all purposes and close the public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals, November 14th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.